Tonight, Starfire's writers completely forget that we are in post-Flashpoint continuity and just make up a whole new continuity of their own. Grayson ends up being the biggest narc you've ever seen because it's always the ones you expect the most. And Telos finally crosses the barrier from, well, that's not very good, to, oh dear God, please make it stop. All that and more tonight on the Not-So-New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 223 of the Not-So-New 52. I am your host and gonna keep this one a little brief. We got 15 comics coming out, which in the general sense, not awful, not really the worst thing it can be. However, this week is event heavy. I didn't think we'd have another week that's event heavy. However, Robin War is happening, and Robin War is apparently just every single issue that came out this week is like something to do with Robin War. That's hyperbole, but not by much. So let me read off the list here, and then I'll tell you how I'm going to do this. So in terms of what's coming out this week, we have Batman, Batman/Superman, Catwoman, Constantine the Hellblazer, Detective Comics, Earth 2 Society, Gotham Academy, Grayson, Green Arrow, Justice League, The Darkseid War, Lex Luthor, New Suicide Squad, Red Hood Arsenal, Starfire, Telos, and our weekly series, Batman and Robin Eternal. So out of that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the Justice League book, because it's also an event, kinda, sorta, a little. We're going to start with that, and then I'm going to roll straight into the Robin War books. Now, this week has part 2 and part 3 coming out. I'm going to do both those back to back. Then there's also 2 tie-ins in Gotham Academy and Red Hood Arsenal. I'm going to do those afterwards, immediately following. And then we'll get back into your regularly scheduled program of like Batman and not Gotham Academy, that was already included. What's another one? New Suicide Squad, stuff like that, the things that aren't part of the event. So if you have no interest in Robin War, you got to skip to like book number 6 of this show. Just letting you know. I would, however, suggest checking it out. There is some positives to this Robin War event if you're not familiar with it. Part 1 was in last week's episode, so definitely check that out. But yeah, we'll go ahead and just jump right into the books here. As I said, starting with Lex Luthor. Justice League, The Darkseid War, Lex Luthor #1, written by Francis Manapul, art by Bong, Dazo. So, over in the main Justice League book, the thing was that once Darkseid died, some of his followers said, oh, hey, we have a prophecy that some man would come from Earth and he would be basically Superman and we would all worship him. And Lex is like, yep, that's me. So he's gotten some amount of Darkseid powers, but not all of it yet. And that's what this issue here is. But we open up more or less with a flashback. Apparently Lex fell down into a well at some point and he's yelling up for help, and then all of a sudden he sees his dog barking up top and he's like, oh, Dad must be near. Dad, help, I'm down here. Apparently they were out on a hunting trip and Lex's dad is like, you stupid idiot, you ran away as soon as we saw a buck and now you can't even, you fell down into a well. Here's a rope, pull yourself up. And Lex is like, I can't. I need your help. And he's like, yeah, you're weak. You got to put in the work. That's what you need to do. And Lex, like, he's crying, but he buckles down and he grabs hold of the rope. Then we go back to modern times, and Lex is like, hey, you know, I'm ready to use my powers. What are we doing? And she's like, no. Your body's still adapting. You need to take things at a step at a time here. Like, I wanted to show you what all this is about. Like, why we have a prophecy for you to take over. And we see that there is this village enslaved on Apocalypse. And it's like, yeah, like, we've been enslaved our entire lives. We have no idea what it is to be free. And we want you, for the first time ever, to be our hope, to be someone who will lead us to freedom. And Lex is like, yep, here I am. I'm definitely a prophecy guy. And he's like, yeah, well, you know, you're not really what we were expecting. And he's like, well, you were expecting a giant lumbering ape with a stupid spit curl? And she's like, what? And he's like, what? And so they continue on. But it says here that with the power of the Omega running through Lex's body, they're going to free many people, kill anyone who stands in their way. And Ardora is a true believer. So at that point, Lex is just like, all right, time to flex my muscle. Let me show you what it means to have this power. And he's standing on the edge of a cliff, which as soon as he uses his powers, it gives way, and he's now just dangling from the edge. So we flash back one more time to the Daily Planet, or maybe it's LexCorp building, I don't know, but he's talking to Perry White, and he's basically saying, hey, Perry, you're gonna kill that story, you're gonna, like, do whatever. Basically, he's just saying, like, I am Lex Luthor, I have done incredible things in the world of business, and, like, I want you to see to it that this story is killed, or I will kill the Daily Planet itself. And Perry literally just spits in his face, to which Lex moves to strangle him, and one of the lawyers nearby is like, oh my god, he's gonna sue you, Mr. Luthor, you can't be doing that. So, cuts back to modern day, and Ardora's like, you seem angry. You seem like you have something to prove. I feel like you have a struggle inside of you. That you're not going to be able to control the power of Darkseid, the Omega effect, unless you control that anger inside of you. And he's like, you have no idea. And she's like, well, I can help. The others choose to believe in you because hope is this thing that they want. But, like, for me, I choose to believe in you because, like, I want you to succeed. I want there to be something else there. So it's basically saying, for a proud man like you to show your strength, you need to be able to ask for help. And then we cut back one more time to what seems to be an early meeting of Superman and Lex. Lex is going down in, like, a biplane for some reason, and he's like, Luthor, I'm noticing a bomb inside your plane, like, what's all this about? And Lex is like, whoa, what the hell are you? And he's like, oh, I'm Superman, I'm here to save you. And he's like, what's in it for you? Nobody ever acts just purely out of altruism. That's stupid. And Superman's like, well, I am and I can. And Lex is like, nah, Lex Luthor will never ask for help. Never. And he just lets go of the plane and, like, plunges into the sea. So we go back to modern day again, and Ardora's like, no, seriously, just reach out. Let me get your help. And he's like, no, I can do this myself. I'm free. It's way. And then the cliff starts giving way. He falls down. We cut back and forth to the well where he's trying to pull himself up there. And Ardora's like, hey, you need to be strong. You need to let go of the past. She's diving in after him. And as they are about to fall to their deaths into this molten core of a volcano or something, Lex is like, you're about to die for me. Why? And she's like, well, because I also believe in hope. And the Omega effect takes effect. All of a sudden, there's this blast of energy where Lex is able to fly them out of the volcano. They tumble to the ground, and Lex is like, what did you do? How'd you do that? And she's like, I didn't do anything. You opened yourself up to me, and therefore it works. Because the Omega effect doesn't care if you're good or evil, like righteous or, like, naughty. Like, it doesn't care. It just wants you to be true to yourself, and it will give you the power of what you need. So we all stand beside you now, Lex, and we see he looks entirely like Darkseid now. An army of parademons are all just hovering around him, ready to go. And Ardora's just says, your army awaits, as he says, well, let's get to work. So that's the issue. Okay. Okay. Like, I don't think out of all of the issues, except maybe Flash, because Flash was absolutely pointless, but I think out of all the issues, this one is the one that, like, added the least to the story. It added the least to what is going on, because it essentially is, like, the end of the Lex Luthor getting his powers in comic is, and now he is Darkseid and he can control these things. And then we get an issue saying, like, okay, you're like 90% Darkseid, but for that extra 10%, we need to show that you have pathos. And then, like, he does. And then it's like, oh, okay, yeah, you're an interesting enough character to have Darkseid in you now. It's like, oh, okay, I'm glad you spent $4.99 on that book. Thank you. So yeah, it's iffy for me. I like the way it's drawn. I think it looks great. The flashbacks are pretty good in their own right. They also look great there. And writing wise, I think it's useful, but I don't know. Unless it becomes something, which I don't think it will, the idea that Lex, like, realizing he needs to ask for help occasionally, I don't know, it feels weird, especially with how much character development Lex has gotten throughout like Forever Evil and all that stuff. Like, this shouldn't be a lesson that still needs to be learned. I feel like we're already at it. So overall, it's still probably a 7. I'd still say it's good. It's just it's a weird little thing where if you're looking at the whole history of Lex Luthor, or like the idea of Lex Luthor, I think it works a lot better than the character that we've actually been reading for like 3 years now, because that character has absolutely moved past this point. Grayson number 15, written by Tom King and Tim Seeley, art by Mikel Janin. So we interrupt your regularly scheduled Grayson story to bring you Robin War Part 2. Last issue was Robin War, the one-shot where all of the previous Robins met up with the We Are Robin kids and like a whole army of teenage Robins, and the Court of Owls is planning something. It has to do with Grayson. So, yeah, this issue picks up where you get all these different looking kids, including the ones we know from We Are Robin. They're all saying, I am Robin, to which Damian, standing with the rest of the actual Robins, is like, no, you are not. And Grayson's like, okay, like, he's a dick, but, like, actually, yes. You don't have training. You're all very eager to jump into this thing when you should be terrified. And I am the first Robin. I am responsible for you all to some extent. And therefore, we are going to help you guys out, and we're going to make it so that you actually stand a chance of doing something out there. Welcome to Robin School. So we get a little bit where Tim takes a couple of them, Jason takes a couple, they all do a thing. So Tim starts off with a few, and he's teaching some martial arts. He blindfolds them and starts like whapping them with his bow staff. And he's all the while we're getting the conversations between the main 4 Robins as they're basically saying like, this is a bad idea, we shouldn't be doing this, or I think it's the only thing we can do, we're responsible for these kids, yada yada. But as we see during the fight, one of the We Are Robin kids, I can't remember his name, but one of them is smart enough on his feet that he's able to block Tim's attack, and Tim says the one thing about Robin you need to know is investigation. That's how you summarize it in one word. And each of them do this. We each have one word for each of the Robins. So they're supposed to all be underground, but Jason says, screw that. You guys need some practical learning. This is a mob hideout. You guys will get killed if you try to take them on, but I want you to go down and steal a wheel off of each of their cars. And as they're doing so, Jason's like, I need to find a way to be able to blame this on Tim because they're all going to get shot. But then one of the We Are Robin kids named Dax comes up and says, hey, I didn't know if you meant like a tire wheel or a steering wheel, so I stole both. And Jason's like, the one word that I use for Robin is confidence. You got it, kid. We then cut over to Damian, whose whole shtick is beating the ever-loving crap out of these kids. And he's like, you are weak, you are sludge, you are a waste of my time, you will only fail, you will never succeed at anything, y'all suck. And his one word for Robin is suffering. However, one of the We Are Robin kids, whatever her name is, gets up onto her feet after everyone else is knocked out and says, like, I can do this all day. So then we go to Duke, who is doing a one-on-one sparring session with Grayson. And Grayson's just like, hey, you know, I want to get a one-on-one with all the kids, see where their strengths and weaknesses are. What's your name? And he's like, oh, I'm Duke Thomas. What's yours? And Grayson, like, dodges the question. And he's like, yeah, I just want to see your strengths and weaknesses. And Duke's just like, cool. What's your name, man? And Dick's like, don't worry about it. We're all chill here. He's like, okay, Dick Grayson. And Grayson's like, I'm sorry, what? And he's like, well, Nightwing always seems like a grown-up Robin. Nightwing is Dick Grayson. Dick Grayson was killed on TV, and now you're here with your weird little warpy face because your Hypnos thing. Yeah, you're clearly Dick Grayson. And he manages to knock Dick on his ass, and Dick's like, all right, impressive. So then we go out on the street, and we find out that one of the Robins, is streaming all the internal talks to Jim Gordon. And Jim's like, okay, we know exactly where they're located. We know all this stuff. They're training these kids. I don't know why specifically, but they're doing this. And we see, basically, he's like, I don't like what this is going on, but I need to talk to like the councilwoman. I want to figure out exactly where this is going. All the while he's like arresting some guy for purse snatching. So we see that the We Are Robin kids, except for Rico, who's off in Gotham Academy, they're all brought off on missions because they need to figure out what the GCPD are up to. So we have Dre and Tim go and break into GCPD to get info. Jason and Dax try to cause a distraction to see what the police's weapons are. Damian and Isabella are keeping an eye on the new Jim Gordon Batman because apparently Grayson doesn't trust him. And Grayson and Duke are just going to be perching on gargoyles, just overwatching, sitting and waiting. And we get a little scene between them where Duke's like, I hate sitting and waiting. And Grayson's like, yeah, I know, me too. And Duke's like, aren't you going to tell me that like it's necessary to being a Robin and you wouldn't understand the importance of it? And Grayson's like, do you want me to say that? Because no. Each of you Robins are going to do your own thing, like whatever. So we see as Tim and Dre are going in through the data banks. A bunch of security guards and cops are already there waiting in late. We see Jason and Dax, same thing. They get caught up by a bunch of cops. One of them, Jason says, when we get out of this, we're going to do blank, blank, blank. And then Dax says, when we get out of this, man, you're so cool. You're my favorite hero. And Jason says, kid, I'm everyone's hero. Then we see Damian and Isabella realize they also fell into a trap, so they get caught up by Batman. And all the kids that were waiting down in the underground, hiding out from the Robin laws, they all get caught up by police as well. And then there's a spotlight shown on Duke and Grayson saying, like, you're all under arrest, this is the thing. And Duke is immediately like, this shouldn't have happened. This is like, what happened here? And Grayson's like, oh, I set everyone up. I've been feeding info to Jim Gordon this whole time, to Batman this whole time. They knew we were coming. And Duke's like, why would you do that? And he's like, I don't have the full picture here. And there are so many of you kids that if I didn't get you all contained and safely put away in jail, someone else was going to die. I needed you all off the board while I investigate things, which is why I also put the other actually trained Robins are going to be in the jail with you. When it comes time, we're going to bust everybody out and we'll figure it out. But I need like the board totally cleared so I can see who the players even are here. Also, you're going to need to go in there and get arrested and tell the other Robins that they're part of my master plan, because I also did not inform them of that either. And Duke's like, dude, you're the worst. Why would you do that? And he's like, Duke, look, I trust you. Everyone knows that you have leadership potential inside you. They will listen to you if you say it. You just got to get in there and do it. So at that point, Dick reveals his single word for Robin, and it's family. And so he jumps off the rooftop as the cops approach Duke. And we see that a Court of Owls person is watching nearby saying, oh, yes, care about your family, Nightwing, and we will care about you. Hoo, hoo, hoo. It's fine. It's a solid next part. Grayson using the spy stuff feels like it is actually falling in online with the character as he's evolved into, rather than just being the vague idea that is Dick Grayson. I like how we work in the We Are Robin and like the expanded group to basically say like, yes, all of these kids are here, they're all wanting to be Robin, but the We Are Robin kids are special in that they have potential. They are actually capable of stepping up, whereas all the other ones are like, oh, I stubbed my toe, I can't go on this mission anymore. So no, I think it does a good job of balancing everything. My only criticism is actually the Damian stuff. I'm sure we'll get more on him. I think he has a direct like issue of his series is a Robin War part, but he just seems way too mean about this for absolutely no reason. And I get that's kind of Damian's thing, but like, I don't know. It seems weird. It seems like he's way too harsh right now. So overall, 7.5. I enjoy it. I think the art's really good. Even if it's in just totally interrupting Grayson, has no flow at all in that. It's fine for what it is. Detective Comics number 47, written by Ray Fawkes, art by Steve Pugh. This is part 3 of Robin War, and the last part was in Grayson, where they trained a couple of the Robins from We Are Robin, like a little bit, they being the original Robins, and then Grayson literally just sent everybody to jail. He got them all with the cops so that he could do his own investigating. This issue picks up with a mysterious figure, who is just Dick Grayson, is beating the ever-loving crap out of Jim Gordon, who is in his bat suit. And he's like, oh, you're on the wrong side of all this. And there's a through line throughout this book of Gordon talking about how as a kid he played cops and robbers with the other kids. He always wanted to be a cop in the game, where everyone made fun of him for it. But he's like, I like doing it. I like being the good guy. And he comments on how the other kids, they were still good kids. It's not like they were like wanting to be criminals, but they would still occasionally choose to be robbers. And he posits it's because they like putting on the mask. So we cut to a little hour, like an hour earlier, and Bullock has taken Gordon to a new holding penitentiary or whatever that is being used specifically for these kids that are arrested under the Robin laws, called the Cage. And I really do want to point out here how on the nose it is. They are Robins in dangling cages down from the roof, and in the corner are a bunch of owl statues. For anyone who isn't following this event, hint, hint. So yeah, Gordon's like, oh, this is awful. This is horrible. Like, do their parents know they're being kept like this? Where's the due process? And Bullock's like, I don't know what to tell you, man. This has been messed up from day one. So we see some of the Robins talking inside, and Damien's just like, oh, Grayson betrayed us. The rest of us would never turn on our own unless these newbies did something. And the We Are Robin kids are like, hey, shut up, you stupid toddler. Everyone's looking around at the cops down on the ground who seem to be waiting for something. And then they notice Rico. And they're like, Rico, hey, where have you been? She's like, I was in an issue of Gotham Academy. There were zombies. It was a weird time. And she has a black eye, and she comments how a cop elbowed her in the face when they're trying to arrest her. And Gordon and them hear that, I'd be like, Jesus Christ, this is like a civil rights nightmare. I can't believe this is going on. And Gordon's like, yeah, look, you're preaching to the choir, but like, technically this is made by the people who make the laws, so I don't know if it's even illegal. But there's a whole bunch of combustible stuff on the floor for like no reason, being kept in barrels, and Bullock wants to smoke. So they go outside. Damien starts doing his beautiful mind thing where he's like, oh, I can free all of us. It's sundown, and Tim Drake and Jason Todd can be resourceful, and we can rescue these pretenders if we need to, da-da-da. And as he's talking, we see he reaches into his domino mask, which he's had on this whole time, and he pulls out a hidden little technology batarang thing. It's a bomb. He pulls out a bomb, and he says, there's only one real Robin here. So we see as they get up to the roof, Gordon calls up Councilwoman Noctua and is like, hey, what the hell, man? This is messed up. I really do not want you to be doing this. And they're like, understood. You can call me during business hours. But as it stands right now, we're just going to go ahead and keep doing what we're doing. And Gordon gets so pissed, he gets in his rookie suit and flies off. We see that he arrives, I believe, back home. It might, honest to God, be the councilwoman's home, but they really don't say it. Regardless, when he gets there, Grayson's inside and is just looking through some stuff. And then we get to the fight scene that we open the issue with. And as Grayson has tackled Batman down to the ground, he's obviously got a leg up on Gordon, because, like, what's Gordon going to do? Gordon does manage to hit him in the back with a taser punch, to which immediately, as soon as he gets a second to breathe, Gordon pulls off his hood and he's like, Grayson, stop. Jesus, man, it's me. What are you doing? And he's like, oh, well, you kind of snuck up on me, instincts and all that. We go back over to the cage, and we see everyone else is suspicious of Damien. They're like, we know you're up to something. What are you planning on doing? And he's like, oh, just shut up. I don't need to tell you guys anything. And like, don't do anything stupid. He's like, oh, well, maybe that works for you, Red Robin, but I am Robin. It's a recurring motif. So he throws the bomb down on the ground. Everyone freaks out because it hits a barrel that says risk of explosion. However, right before it can do anything, it gets hit with a bunch of foam. Turns out they have like security drone foam cannons. All the cops notice that there's an explosive. They're like, all right, this is... We shouldn't have let these kids have their costumes in there. We're gonna take them all down out of their cages. We're gonna strip them all out of their costumes, and that's what we're gonna do now. And immediately, Red Robin is just like, "Oh, okay, this was the plan. Got it. You figured that it wouldn't explode, and now we all get to get out of our cage and theoretically fight." So we see like Duke is taking control of all the We Are Robin kids and just being like, nobody resist, do what they say, it's not worth the risk. And Damien's just like, you coward. So as they're going to be let out of their cage, we see someone comes in right beforehand and says, stop, everyone hold the standard down. And they're like, who's that? Oh my God. So we go back over to Grayson and Gordon, and they basically get 2 full pages of Grayson being like, you know this isn't right. And Gordon's like, yeah, I needed somebody else to tell me that, I guess, for me to want to do something, because like this isn't right. And Grayson's like, not only is it not right, like ethically, isn't it also just super convenient and like it feels like a setup? And Gordon's like, you know what, it does feel like it's Detective Comics, let's do some detective work. So they figure Noctua is the one who's had the most to gain through all this. They're gonna go investigate her. And as they jump off and they're saying like, all right, time to get down to business. We go back one more time over to the cage as they're like, oh no, it's you. You guys are the ones who killed that cop. And the guy's like, whoa, no. The Robin kid is the one who killed the cops. So like, yeah, we may have set up some dominoes or whatever, but you kids are out of control and we need to deal with you properly. And we see... it's the Court of Owls. What? No. What? Yeah, it's some rich guy in an owl mask and a bunch of talons. Yep. I mean, yeah, sure. The cage thing is weird. If it ends up being anything like substantial, so be it. But I don't feel like it's any different than just putting them in a jail. Suffice to say, it's a super jail. Damien still feels weird. That was a problem I had with the last part. It's a problem I have with this part where, I mean, I guess he's in character in so much as, like, he's the worst. But at the same time, he just feels like, I don't know. I kind of expect him to play nicer with the Bat family at the very least. But, like, everything he says is... he just hates everyone involved here. So, I don't know. Maybe that's just me expecting too much of him, but... it's a solid issue. Art's not as great as the last part, but it's Mikel Janin on the last part, so who can really fault that? No, it's just kind of another issue of Robin War. I except for Batman joining in with Grayson, not a lot really happens. So I'm going to say this one's probably a 6.5. Not quite doing it for me, but we'll see what happens when we get to the next one. Gotham Academy number 13, written by Brendan Fletcher, art by Adam Archer. So, Robin War tie-in. We learned in Robin War, the one-shot part 1, whatever you want to call it, that Rico from the We Are Robin series was sent to Gotham Academy to get away from the whole rest of the story. And... now she's here, but we don't open with that. We open instead with some random-ass kid who is running into a greenhouse holding a duffel bag. We see that his roommate is a Robin, in so much as a kid who dresses up like Robin and tries to fight crime. This kid apparently stole a bunch of donation money, and the roommate's like, wait, no, we can just put it back. You don't have to get in trouble. And then as he's trying to bury the money in the greenhouse like soil, a hand comes up and like, it's a zombie, or at least it seems that way. And so they run out of the greenhouse as fast as possible and back to the academy. We see the next morning that's the headmaster's like, yeah, we got the money back. The kids both been expelled. my car's still gone. What's that about? And we see Colton's like, I don't know. It's crazy. It's weird. And they basically say, all right, for anyone who wasn't keeping up with Robin more, being a Robin is illegal. It's actually against the law now. You're not allowed to dress up like a Robin. So don't do that. Also, Olive Silverlock, come and speak with me. And they're just like, oh, Olive, are you a Robin? Are you in trouble because you're a Robin? And she's like, no, I hate Batman. Batman's the worst. I don't know what this is about. So we see they're hanging outside the headmaster's office when all of a sudden she's in charge of Rico. And she's like, hi, everyone, this is Rico. She's definitely not a Robin, and she's here to hang out for, like, just the day, and she's going to be my roommate for the night. And as she's getting introduced to everybody, Maps is like, harumph, and just gets up and storms out. And as Olive goes out to the courtyard to talk to her, she's like, hey, I was supposed to be your roommate after your other roommate left. Like, what? And now she's coming in and she has like almost an identical look to me. She's exactly the same type of character. What's that about? And Olive's like, it's just for a night. I can talk to the person about making you my roommate like immediately afterwards. You're my best friend. We're all good. And she's like, awesome, cool. Then we got to go find a zombie because that's still a rumor around school. So they go down to the greenhouse and they look at the dirt and whatnot. And they say, yep, looks like something popped out of here. And there's like a whole tunnel system underneath that isn't part of the tunnel system we already know about. So we got to figure out a plan. And we see that they sketch out a plan where it's got a net that's hoisted up to the roof. They are going to use the brainiest guy in school, who is Dr. Kirk Langstrom, who's working in his lab late at night on something electrical. And then they're going to coax the zombie over to the window using brain-shaped foods like walnuts. And that's the plan. And Olive is like, I don't think walnuts are like zombie food. And she's like, no, don't worry about it. We got this all mapped out. It's going to be fine. So as they're waiting, they see Rico dressed as a Robin, like perched on her windowsill about to jump out. And Mouse is like, oh my God, it's Rico. You're a Robin. Your suit is awesome. And Rico's like, please shut up. You're not supposed to know who I am. So she goes up to the roof to talk with them. And Maps is me like, oh my God, have you fought with Batman? Like, what was it like? How was everything? It's just like, no, I haven't really fought with Batman. Like, we thought someone was helping us over in our book, but nah, it hasn't been that much. And she's like, cool. Yeah, no, I've actually met up with 2 of the Robins, and like, we fought Clayface and Calamity and a werewolf. And Rico's like, what the hell goes on around here? This is insane. This is what? So Olive gets all pissed off because she doesn't like the fact that Rico's a Robin because she hates Batman, when all of a sudden they got eyes on the zombie and they're like, hey, plan's going good. It looks like he's approaching the window. He's close to the net, but he's not on the net. Someone needs to get him to move like 3 feet to the left. So Maps just jumps out and it's just like, hey, Mr. Zombie, over here. And everyone's like, no, Maps, don't. They try to run to her aid, but then they get a good glimpse of the zombie, and he is zombie-ish. He looks dead, but he's got like this weird tattered outfit with a bunch of knives all over it. And they're like, what the hell is that? But he steps into the net. Colton pulls it up. But because of the knives, it shreds the net, and he's able to get out, and he starts like leaping across rooftops. Kirk Langstrom hears them all yelling outside, and he's like, what the devil's going on out here? And he's like, oh, flying zombie. So they tell Kirk Langstrom about the zombie thing. They all go out to the greenhouse. As they're looking at it, a security guard comes up and says, this area is closed to everyone, including teachers. Get out. So Langstrom's like, okay, I believe you kids. Something's going on. Something about power cables buried near this area. Maybe that's what resuscitated this creature, whatever it is. And maybe that's why he was drawn to my office, because I was working on something electrical. But then the security guard, he just locks the door to the greenhouse, takes 2 steps away, the kids aren't even gone yet, and goes, whoo, and a bunch of Court of Owls people walk up. And Rico sees all this, and she's like, I don't know what I saw, but it was weird. And they're like, well, that's probably very important to the case. We shouldn't discount it. So it turns out they've got a whole plan. They're going to start up the electrical machine again, and they're going to sync it to the frequency of the blah, blah, whatever. It's going to try to bait the zombie to them. So they flip it on. It immediately blows a fuse. So as the fuse gets fixed. They see that the zombie has already come in, has entered the building, smashed through a window. And everyone's freaking out, but Olive's like, screw this, and just goes right up to the zombie. The zombie turns around, sees her, notices her hair, and says Silverlock, to which point everyone's like, oh, and she's like, yeah, I'm Olive Silverlock, and he says, Ephraim, me Ephraim. And it's just like, okay, well, I guess he's intelligent. So at that point, everyone's freaking out, just like, okay, well, I guess we gotta bring him to the school. So next morning starts up, and Langstrom gives the breakdown saying like, yeah, we're keeping him at the school. We have no idea what's up, but he's at least 200 years old, and somehow he recognized Olive, or at least Silverlock. It's okay for anyone who's in the dark about this. Court of Owl's house thing's called Talons. This is a Talon. It's a Talon. They keep them on ice or they bury them, but they are able to be brought back at any point. This one is Ephraim, who came from 200 years ago. The end. But instead, this book continues where Rico gets a call from Duke, and we get the whole other side of the story that was in Robin War Part 1. Maps tries to go off saying like, hey, I want to be there. I want to keep your back or whatever. And Olive says, hey, I'll hold back for like 10 seconds, okay? As Maps goes out, Rico's getting arrested. Turns out Olive snitched. Olive was like, yeah, no, she was illegal, and I was looking out for you because, like, she's a bad influence. And Maps is like, you just broke, like, rule number 1 of being cool in our group. How dare you? So Maps runs off, and Kyle comes up like, yeah, I don't think she's dumb enough to get herself arrested, so, like, don't worry about her. But we see Maps is fully intent on getting herself arrested, but before she can, Damien is hiding in a tree and says, hey, Maps, don't do that. Olive is right. You need to back off for a little bit. Don't get involved with all the Robin Moore stuff. Just keep to yourself. I'm going to be taking care of a lot of stuff here. However, I've left a bunch of caches of Robin paraphernalia and tools and weapons that you can use, and you will know the time when I come for it. And she's like, yes, sir. So, yeah, to be continued in Robin War. It's another Gotham Academy issue. I mean, it as much as this is a Robin War tie-in, in so much as Robin War is happening elsewhere, it's a Gotham Academy issue. So I will say the art felt a little weird. It wasn't the standard artist. Adam Archer does a great job. I think I recognized all the characters. Wasn't an issue there. It just doesn't feel in that same sort of storybook vibe that I've gotten so used to from this book. So yeah, I think this one is probably just going to be like a 7. It's good for a tie-in. For a Gotham Academy issue, it's stock standard as hell. So yeah, it's just kind of doing its own thing there. Yeah, 7. Don't really have much more to say. Red Hood Arsenal number 7, written by Scott Lobdell, art by Javier Fernandez. This is a tie-in to Robin War. And by that I mean, no it isn't. But it's technically happening at the same time. So last issue we had Red Hood took Joker's daughter into their club because he saw his previous anger in her and wanted to try to save her. This issue opens up with Red Hood basically saying, I had to come back to Gotham for like the 12th time, despite the fact I don't want to be here, and it's because of Robin War. Arsenal is not a part of Robin War, so it's going to open with him saying, Arsenal, I swear to God, if you get involved in this, I will murder you in your sleep. Stay away from my problems here. And Arsenal, they're talking through like a telecommunication arrow, and Arsenal's like, I didn't quite pick that. Are you telling me to stay away? And he's like, of course. Yes, absolutely. Go away. So the line goes dead. We see Joker's daughters there just like, all right, what about me? What are we doing? What's going on? And Arsenal's upset because obviously Jason's the one who wanted her on, but now he's just shunting her off with him. So it's like, all right, fine. But like, you heard him. We can't do anything. We're going to hang out in Gotham till he's done, and then we're just going to leave. So that's how it is. We then see Red Hood. Like I said, this happens somewhere in the middle of Robin War. He's meeting up with Tim Drake. They're doing reconnaissance, and they say like, yeah, no, it's crazy, this whole Robin Law situation where all these kids are getting arrested just for being dressed up as a Robin. Crazy. And then that's it for that. We go back over to Arsenal, where he's just kind of dealing with Joker's daughter as she's drinking water from the runoff of a water tower. And then all of a sudden his phone rings and he's like, oh, we got a job. Hey, what's going on? And it turns out it's a job here in Gotham, and it's over at the fairgrounds. And it's just like, yes, absolutely, we got it. So they jump off the roof. It's like, yeah, we got a gig. And Arsenal's like, whoa, hold on. I don't know about you. Like, I got something I could do. And she's like, no, I'm part of the group. And Jason said that, like, we could not interfere with his stuff while we're here, but we could still do whatever we want as long as we stay away from him. And Arsenal's like, fair enough. We get a 2-page thing of Tim and Jason just running together, and Jason's like, you know, when I came back from the dead, I saw that you were Robin, and like, that really hurt, because like, I thought that was my role, and I had been replaced. And Tim's like, I never meant to replace you, man. We all thought you were dead. And he's like, no, I've gotten over it. It's fine. Don't worry about it. And Tim's like, I had an even harder time being Robin. That's why I became Red Robin instead, because like, you died, man. How do you follow up the only dead Robin? Yeesh. So they basically just fist bump, and that's the scene. We then see that apparently the thing going on that they have been hired for is at the circus, and some group of absolute no-names have been hired to come in and try to kidnap orphan children from the circus who are roughly 12 to whatever years old. Your standard Robin prototype. And so we see these guys are named Phosphorus Rex, Big Top, and Siam. I'm not going to tell you their powers. It doesn't matter. So we see everyone else is running out of the circus. Arsenal fires a asbestos arrow at Phosphorus Rex. He fires a gooey arrow at Siam, and then all that's left is Big Top, who sits on Arsenal, and Arsenal's unable to escape, but he told Joker's daughter, hang back, don't get involved, I don't want you anywhere near this, because we don't know if you can control your murderous impulses yet. And as he's unable to get up, Joker's daughter's like, and he's like, fine, whatever, hop in. So immediately she puts like several shards of metal into Big Top's brain. Doesn't look good. She continues to fight off Phosphorus Rex and Siam, who have since escaped, and she does it very brutally. But she's like, oh, I'm not killing you, I'm just maiming you really, really badly. But Big Top is down for the count, and Joker's daughter approaches with a pistol and is like, well, may as well go ahead and put you out of your misery. To which Arsenal approaches and says, hey, if you do that, I'm going to have to put you down. That's on Jason's orders. And she turns around with like big puppy dog eyes. And this whole time they're doing this thing where like he's giving her commands like she's a dog. And when she's about to shoot, it says heal. It's weird. But regardless, she turns around with the puppy dog eyes and is just like, can I tell you something about those Robin kids? The ones that the laws were made about? I want to be like them. I want to be able to stand for something. I want to behave, but there's something in me that just says I can't. And then Arsenal's like, okay, but if you pull the trigger, I'm seriously going to shoot you. And she says, I'm sorry, I wish I was better with this. And we see that she's at least knocked out as they're driving through the rain sometime later. And Arsenal's like, I feel bad for her. Like, I do. She's insane. She needs to be on meds. But like, we might be the only way that she's able to like get on the better path. Like, she is able to self-improve in that way. She's a kid, first and foremost. And as Joker's daughter comes to, she's like, what happened? And he's like, yeah, I tasered you because you were going to kill Big Top. And he's like, oh, I wasn't. I promise you I wasn't. He's like, yeah, okay, sure. And he's like, no, serious. Like, you guys are giving me my first real chance here. That means something. Red Hood believes in me. That makes me want to believe in myself as well. And Arsenal's like, ugh, God damn it. So he unties her and just being like, I'm going to regret this. I know it. And then a bunch of lava zombies come up from the ground, to which Joker's daughter says, oh, I recognize these guys from the underground. They come from rock bottom. Weird that they're up here, though. And there's too many to escape from, so they just get dragged underground. And then we get one final page of Red Hood. It just says soon, so I'm assuming all of Robin War happens. And then Red Hood approaches and he's like, oh, Jason, I followed your tracking here. And he sees a half-molten pile of what once was a motorcycle pulled halfway into this pavement. And he says, this can't be good. Okay. I'm not gonna lie. The Joker's daughter stuff, the moments of taking a breath and having her like literally say like, you know, I can't be good, I'm gonna put this person down, and then turning around saying I'm not gonna do it. I think the pacing that it's going at, honest to God, works in making me give a crap about Joker's daughter. Because, like, it's doing something here. It's not just saying that she's insane in that murderous way. It's insane in, like, a very, very manic, depressed, bipolar sort of way. Where, like, 1 minute she'll be one way, the next she'll be the other. But, like, that's interesting. You're giving me a way that she could actually improve, but also can easily fall back into her old ways at any moment. Writing-wise, you've given yourself a way out of any situation. Counterpoint. Robin's talking about being Robin, stupid as hell. The fact that Red Robin, he says he took that name because he was scared to be Robin, stupid as hell. The lava zombies, stupid as hell. The fact that people were hired to kidnap children from the circus, and it's implied it might be Court of Owls related, but it's stupid. It's a lot of stupid, and it doesn't make up for 3 pages of actually kind of okay. So, I'm gonna say 6. I was 5.5 or a 6. I'm going to give it the 6 out of just, at least it's a tie-in. It's, you know, a little forgivable of something here. But, like, God, I still am not looking forward to this book. Batman number 47, written by Scott Snyder, art by Greg Capullo. So, last issue, Gordon went to take down Bloom. Turns out Bloom did something to the rookie suit, and the rookie suit's trying to kill Gordon. We open up this issue. There's a little interstitial of a girl, like, at the rec center, poking at flowers, one of which looks very similar to Doom, as Gordon is giving the backstory to the worst card game to ever exist that apparently Bullock made up, that a bunch of the cops play, called GCPD, also known as Gotham Card Played Down. I can feel Scott Snyder's fingers all over this one, but it turns out it's just poker, but there's a secret card in the middle that is like on a timer, and once that card gets flipped over, all hell breaks loose or something. We'll get back to it. So we go back over to the rookie who's attacking Gordon. He basically just throws Gordon up through the roof, and there's a news chopper overhead to which Gordon's about to collide with. So he very quickly flips around, fires off a grappling hook from his belt, and pulls himself back down to the roof before he hits the blades, but it's barely by an inch. And as he's pulled back down, he's like, well, luckily I'm about to land in a place full of flowers, so I should land on something soft. And he just collapses into Bloom's pile of seeds, and he's like, all right, this sucks, I hate it. So rookie suit comes up again, and he's like, rookie knows all of my stuff. What am I supposed to do to be able to fight against him? I got to think about what I've got. And he remembers that part of his smaller suit, his like suit that he wears inside of rookie, has molecular contractors in the fingers. So he touches the place where the missiles come out of the rookie suit, and then he just like does whatever he can to bait the rookie suit into firing off the missiles. And he's like, all right, here we go. And then he like takes cover. The rookie suit explodes, and he feels all bad about it. And Bloom's like, oh, well, after everything you've been through together. Then we got over to what was Duke doing. Duke was over in the Iceberg Lounge. He was getting some info from Penguin's goons or whatever. Turns out, I don't even remember this guy's name, if I'm being... Whale? Was it Tobias Whale or something? I don't know. He's got Duke by the shoe. Duke just spins around with some acid and manages to escape. And as he's running away, Penguin pulls out, I'm going to call it a hand cannon because of the effect it has. And he sees Duke running on the roof and he's like, all right, well, the house always wins. And he shoots Duke and Duke goes flying. We go back to Bloom, who's got Jim pinned down. He's like in full Slender Man mode, just giant foot that has like sprawled out toes in every direction, holding him down. And he's like, oh yeah, you know, you must be wondering if you made any difference, if anything you did just matters. Just know, of course not. Nothing at all mattered. But it mattered to me. So he says something about how he's going to like use the seeds to change Gotham, and he wishes Gordon could stick around to see it. And Gordon's like, oh, you mean those seeds? Go ahead and take a look at those seeds over there. And all the seeds are like crickling and popping and all this stuff. And he's like, yeah, we know that you used electromagnetic shells around radioactive cores, so we just fried them. We overloaded them, and now none of them are going to work. So whatever it is your plan was, not going to happen. And I'm willing to die with that, because that's part of being a police officer. So do your worst, buddy. And Bloom's pissed off. He's about to attack. And then all of a sudden, Bloom starts failing. His own electrical start going down. He's like, what? A blocker? But where? And we look over at the rookie suit and we see what remains of it, the little helmet or whatever, is sending off a blocker to Bloom's thing. And he's like, rookie has saved me once and all. So we cut back over to Duke, who is outside the Iceberg Lounge. He lands in the water. A couple of Penguin's goons are like, oh, hey, look at that. A Black Robin. Crazy. Let's kill him. And as they were about to attack him, Bruce Wayne shows up with a baseball bat. And Duke's like, what? What are you doing here, man? And he's like, you did all of your research on a rec center computers. I figured out your plan. Come here. So we see that Julia's like, hey, are you good? You want us to come down, get you in Bloom? And he's like, wait, hold on 1 minute. And he throws Bloom through a window, just like, yeah, okay, now I'm ready. So we cut back to Bruce and Duke, who have made their way to a subway station. Bruce is just like, look, I'm not going to leave you. You're clearly hurting, Duke. You got to tell me what's up, what's going on. He's like, I don't got to do anything. And then Duke gets a text from Daryl who says, hey, Duke, I have your parents. I've got them. And Bruce tries to contact him and says like, hey, look, whatever it is, it's all going to be all right. And Duke flashes back to a talk he had with Batman on the night of Endgame. And he's like, oh, I know your parents are going to be all right. And Duke's like, okay, Bruce, here's a question. How'd you find me? And he's like, well, I noticed the seed was gone. Then I checked the search history, and then I was able to discover. He's like, no. You didn't discover. You deduced. You managed to take all of these things that are wildly complicated, and you managed to figure them out because you're really good at it. You're like the best in the world at deducing things, you know, like a detective. And Bruce is like, I don't know, what are you saying, man? He's like, look, I think you're being selfish. And Bruce is like, I don't even know what you're talking about. He's like, you're choosing not to look at the shape of the hole that was left behind in your brain. I don't know why, but like we all are paying the price of it. So, and they're like down in the subway now. There's a train coming up. And Bruce is like, Duke, we got to get off the tracks, man. There's a train coming. He's like, no. Look, really look at the hole that was left there. What do you see? And we see as the train approaches, Bruce sees a giant bat. And he pushes Duke out of the way at the last second. And Duke realizes like, oh, I may have gone too far. So he's like, but just leave me alone, Bruce. And he runs off. And Bruce is just left sitting there like, all right. So we see Gordon is being driven back to base in the Bat truck, and everyone on the street's like, yeah, you did. You stopped Bloom. Thank you. You did great. And Gordon's like, all right, Batman deserves a vacation. Where does Batman go on vacation? And Bloom, who's just tied up in the back, is like in the dirt. Am I right? And Gordon's like, all right, look, we got you. You're beat. Why don't you just tell us your plan? Like, what was actually going to go on? And Bloom's like, but what if all of this was still part of my plan? And Gordon's like, okay, yeah, is that... look, I don't even know. I left your mask on, I guess, out of courtesy. I'm going to take that off so I can at least see who I'm dealing with here. But before he can, the roof pries open. He gets stabbed in the arm by another Bloom. There's at least 7 or 8 other Blooms waiting in the road to stop this truck. And they just flip it over. It's completely ruined. And this is where we get the rest of the game, the card game, where Gordon explains that you play poker as aggressively as possible because that's representative of police work in Gotham or whatever. But then when the timer goes off and this card is flipped, all of whatever you played before doesn't matter. And now you all play for just one final hand, and that card is part of like the hand that you can make. And sometimes it's devastating. Sometimes you lose everything you worked for the whole time, but sometimes it can be your beacon in the darkness. It can save your hand. And we see Bruce is just sitting on a park bench, and he's like, okay, all right, I think I just need to say it out loud. And then he gets interrupted by a guy who says, oh, hey, you mind if I sit with you? I've seen you sit on this bench quite often. And Bruce is like, oh, yeah, totally. Yeah, I actually had an accident near here. And the mystery person says, that's funny. So was I. And we see it's the Joker, probably, who's healed from his Jokerisms. Yep. All right, look. If there's one thing I know about Scott Snyder, it's he loves to tell me about a city. If there's a second thing, it's making up some card game and pretending like it's always been a thing. Or some like tradition, something like that. That part is weak. I get it. I understand the thematic point of like, oh yeah, there's this, you never know when it's going to happen, but then he's going to come to the realization and it's going to happen. But like, it's just, your theming works. Congratulations. As for the story itself, I think it does a good job with Bloom. It does a good job of like setting up, okay, it's larger than just the one theoretically. And even then, like, do they all have similar powers? Is it actually multiple like clones? Like, what is this going on? Sets up this mystery, keeps him very solidified as an antagonist. And then going back to the Bruce stuff, I appreciate the fact of like Duke piecing it together and saying like, nah, man, you're Batman. Like, come on, this is not that hard. And it does the twofold of bringing Bruce back into the fold, which obviously we knew was going to happen at some point, and also elevating Duke a little bit in that like he's the one who put it together. Maybe he's not as smart as like Tim Drake or whatever, but he is at least intelligent. He is, and that's something that's been consistent over his character. So kudos. Collectively, I think I'm going to give this one I'll give it an 8. It's a low 8, but it cracks up to the 8 for sure. I enjoyed this one. I think I remember really, really liking the next one from when I read this forever ago. So we'll see if that one still stands up. But yeah, 8 for now. New Suicide Squad number 15, written by Sean Ryan, art by Philippe Briones. So last issue, a bunch of stuff happened. I guess the biggest of which is Waller took out the bombs or deactivated them in everyone's necks, but then still convinced them, nah, it's actually still activated, but it's hooked up to my pulse, so you got to work with me now. This issue picks up where they are taken over a plane, they're flying to Dallas, and Captain Boomerang's like, why in the hell are we flying to Dallas? And she explains the headquarters to the company that is the shell for all these other things is in Dallas. So I'm going to talk to somebody there, because if we go back to Belle Reve, I'm not going to have any evidence to take down Vic Sage, and clearly he's doing something horrible here. And this entire time, Captain Boomerang's just poking fun, just being like, yeah, but it's Dallas, screw that. And he tells Waller, lighten up. He makes fun of the fact that Deadshot isn't able to shoot anymore. And Harley is essentially catatonic. She's just like not interacting with anything. She's depressed. So at that point, he's just like, okay, well, you know what? We've got our issues. Parasite's also like in a coma on the ground, but we can make this work. Isn't that right, Harley? And I was like, yeah, woo, whatever. So we cut to Dallas and we see a truck with Captain Boomerang in the driver's seat is trying to get into this building. And he's like, yeah, I got a specimen in here. And he's like, well, you're not on the list. And he's like, am I not? Click. The whole truck explodes. I guess somehow Boomerang survives. And we see that in all the chaos, a CEO lady is directed to stay in her office until everything is all sorted out. As she's let in there, Waller and Deadshot are already in there, sitting at her desk, just being like, hey, have a seat. And the CEO, like, doesn't care. She's like, you could just ask for a meeting. I mean, this is all a bit dramatic. But Waller still tries to keep the air of being in control. I'm going to hit most of the other stuff dealing with Harley and Boomerang at the same time here. Harley's catatonic still isn't like joining in the fight as all of security is trying to shoot at her and Boomerang. Boomerang gets her down just like, what are you doing? You gotta join in the fight here. And she's just like, no, I'm done with it. This is all done. It's boring. I'm not having fun. And he's like, do you think I'm having fun? Like, this is insane. And it's echoing a line that he said earlier to Waller of like, you should be having fun at the very least. What's the point of doing anything without fun? And Harley says it back to him and he's like, okay, well, yeah, fine, whatever, but it's that or dying and I'd rather not do that. But she's like, well, that would be exciting. And then Boomerang tips on as just being like, well, I thought that you liked being told what to do by a man. You liked men telling you what to do. And she's like, how dare you? And so then she joins in the fight just out of righteous anger. Fast forwarding slightly, Parasite's just been comatose this whole time. As the fight's going on, he crawls his way over to a circuit breaker and he's unable to just reach out and grab the energy. So he takes some plugs and shoves it into his wrists and then powers himself up. All this time, Boomerang and Harley are having like a heart-to-heart on the battlefield of like, Harley doesn't like who she is anymore and wants to change. And Boomerang's like, you think I like being Captain Boomerang with all of my quirks and eccentricities? Like, no, I hate it, but this is who I am. Sometimes you just got to deal with it. And then as Parasite charges up, he gives off a big electrical shock and then immediately falls down comatose again. And they're both like, Jesus Christ, man, this guy, he's so useless. So the other thing is that we have Waller and Deadshot talking to the CEO. Deadshot's just there to hold a gun on her, and CEO's just like, you can tell him to hold down. Like, what am I going to do? It's my office. Like, I'm not going to jump out a window or something. And she's like, no. He's here to remind you what happens if you lie to me. And she's like, I would hope that you would know whether or not I'm lying to you up front. So can we get this going? Like, I've got other things to do today. And Waller's like, all right, why are you trying to destroy Task Force X? And she's like, because you guys are in our way. Like, yeah, we're a big corporation or whatever. We have big plans on things we want to do, and you and your stupid little task force have gotten in the way of us. But like, we've been thinking of ways to get rid of you guys, and so we considered like making metahumans and stuff like that, because that's kind of the big thing to do right now around the world. You don't even recognize it, but that's what's happening. In China, we had a hand in creating that one superhero, and then there was the whole thing in Russia that got out of hand. Like, all that stuff, totally us trying to take you out. And Waller's like, oh, okay, well, what does Vic Sage have to do with it? And just been like, well, we knew that he was working on Task Force X. We were thinking that he was probably pretty pissed off that you weren't following his orders. So we just approached him like, yeah, he was totally on board with helping us out, so long as it meant you got destroyed. Because the plan here is that he's going to allow one of the previous Task Force X people to escape with information that will then be leaked, quote unquote. We're actually going to do the leaking, and then it's going to make everyone so uppity that they'll end up canceling Task Force S, and then we can continue with what we're doing. And Waller's like, okay, why are you telling me all this? You're not even like pretending to hide it. And just be like, why would I waste my time? And she's like, well, I now have your confession. Just like, you literally have a gun held on me. I can just say that I was coerced and that none of it's true. And like, you have no evidence that I was actually physically involved at all. Like, none of this is going to hold up. And at the same time, the Suicide Squad is absolutely an illegal government task force. So they're going to disown it immediately. Like, you don't have any cards here, Waller. And Waller's like, okay, well, what do you want? And she's like, I just want to put this behind us. Look, we can work together. I've already got a way to map out that we can just basically pin this all on Vic Sage and let him go down with the ship. You just, let this be, and we'll go our separate ways. And Waller's like, okay, but if you get to go free now, then we're not done. Like, we are going to be talking again. And the CEO is like, no, we're done. Like, let's be clear here. That's like, you're not going to be doing anything to me. Because, like, look, you're so pissed off at me at all this stuff I do and like all this. Yeah, we profit from people suffering like every other goddamn corporation on the face of the earth. Why do you do it, Waller? And Waller's like, oh, well, I do everything I do to protect this country. And she's like, oh my God, are you really that stupid? Do you really think this is about your country? Waller, we're like in the mid to late 2010s. We've already reached corporatocracy. Nobody in the government does anything unless they run it through me and my companies and other people like me first. Like, whatever it is you're saying for your country, your government, whatever like that, like, people line up for phones more than they line up to vote. You lost. The country is gone. Get over it. And so she just stands up and she's like, all right, well, I guess we're leaving. So they head out the room and Deadshot's like, are you serious? We're just going to leave her? And he's like, look, yeah, we can't do anything. But like right now we got to be more concerned about Vic Sage because he's going to do something stupid. And then we cut over to the secretary Bonnie being approached saying like, hey, Bonnie, you might want to turn on the alarm. Black Manta just escaped. So Black Manta just escaped. That's crazy. I like the CEO. I look, I don't like her in like, you know, oh yeah, good job, corporatocracy. Like, no, obviously that's the worst. But I like that she's just so on the level with Waller. And Waller doesn't have a leg to stand on here. She's like, you came here because your ego got bruised, and I'm here to show you that everything that you've ever believed in is a lie. And just tears her down limb from limb. Great writing. Love that bit. I love the running joke that Parasite is only good for like one single panel, and then he's just out of commission again. I'm not going to get tired of that if I'm being honest. Yeah, no, it's something. I think this book is more so than any other book the most fluctuating in whether or not like I think it's just kind of a stock standard book or if it's actually something that's doing something special. So I'm more on the special side here. I'm gonna give this one I'll give it a 7.5. I think it is good. I think it's very good. My main critique, my biggest problem I have is the Harley plot. I don't feel like there's a good payoff to this because we know Harley just is still Harley. So you can't give her this crisis of self and then she just goes back to being Harley still. So maybe drop that, but the rest of it's fine. Batman Superman number 27, written by Greg Pak, art by Cliff Richards. So last issue was this whole thing. They were setting up a plan to take out Vandal Savage before he used a bunch of uranium in the Arctic to power a giant Nazi machine. Roll with it. This issue picks up many years ago when apparently a group called the Supremacists attacked Gotham, and Gordon, down on the ground, watching it happen, Superman came in, stopped them. So he's like, oh my God, I saw him for the first time. And it was great. And Jimmy Olsen's on a rooftop nearby. He's taking pictures. And we see that because of the writhing tentacles or whatever on the supremacist machine, it knocks Jimmy off the roof. And Superman is going to go get Jimmy. But then he notices there's this giant hurling flaming death ball coming down from the sky. And Gordon's like, Superman made the only choice he could. He had to save millions of lives, but like he let his best friend fall to his death. And I cannot for the life of me believe Superman would do that. But like maybe he didn't. Maybe he knew that Batman was there and would save Jimmy, because he did. Batman swooped in, saved Jimmy Olsen, and he's like, maybe that's what it is. Total trust. That's what we should all aim for, right? So we go back to the Arctic, and Superman just recaps like, okay, Vandal Savage, immortal supervillain, threatens to kill everyone down at that camp unless you get the uranium, and then he's going to feed an artificial sun into a giant Nazi starship. And Batgirl goes over being like, correction, it's a gun. And it's like, it's a Nazi gun. That's a giant gun. It's like, well, I mean, it was a starship, but all of the engine stuff has been disconnected and put back into the turrets. So it's a gun. And it's like, all right, so a gun with the power of the star. And Red Hood's like, should we just blow it up? And just like, no, I think that would be really bad because it would not only possibly kill all of us down here, but also it would alert Vandal Savage, who would teleport in, and then we get our asses kicked because for some reason he's stronger than I am right now. So Superman says, 1, we need to save the lives of all the miners. 2, disable the big gun. 3, capture Vandal Savage, and then stop it forever. And then Jim Gordon decides to chime in with and don't forget 4, don't let your teammates die. And Superman's like, I swear to God, yes, that's implicit, thank you. So we cut back to the same flashback, but this time from Superman's perspective. And he's like, I went up, I destroyed the machine and all that. And everyone was super happy because, we saved the day. But that was the worst day of my life because, I chose to let Jimmy die that day. It was the only choice I could make, but I chose to do that. I didn't know Batman was there. I had no idea. I mean, I'm grateful he was, but Jesus. So he comes down and he's talking to Batman. He's like, hey, thanks, man. I knew you were close by, but I genuinely didn't know you were going to be there in time. And Batman's like, dude, don't worry about it. I would have done the same thing. You don't need to explain, and you'd have been there for me. And Superman's like, yeah, all right, we're friends. We got that. We're the super friends. So we see everyone's getting set up. Everyone's doing whatever. And Superman keeps looking over at Gordon just being like, but now I'm stuck with this guy. And he's a dick. He doesn't, we don't have trust here. We keep on expecting perfection out of each other. And that's not what it is. Is that really what's necessary for trust to be a thing? So as they're walking and they're getting ready to start the plan, Superman's like, look, I know you don't like me. I can't guarantee that nobody is going to die throughout all this. I am just a man. I'm not a god. I'm doing what I can here, okay? I need your help and you need mine. Can we just trust each other through this? And Gordon, goes silent, and Batgirl's like, go on. And he's like, all right, fine. Yeah, we're cool. So, seems that the plan is all of a sudden the teleporter starts up. Vandal Savage is alerted to it, and they're like, I don't know. It just started glowing. Nobody's come through, though. And Vandal's like, or they already came through. And then Superman and Gordon just start kicking everybody in the face. So they start making their way through Vandal's ship and try to get down to the navigation room. They blow it up. Unfortunately, they didn't have as much time as they would have hoped for. They also wanted to get down to the engine room, but Savage caught up to them and started just throwing them around like rag dolls. So, beaten, having to continue on with the plan, it's like, all right, whatever, we got to go. So they go through the teleportation device one more time, and before Vandal can make it through, Gordon drops a grenade on the Vandal side, so that way it all blows up. And Vandal's like, okay, well, I can still fly this ship to the Arctic, so you bought yourselves 6 hours. Fast forward 6 hours, Vandal arrives, and we see the dead bodies of Grayson and Red Hood down on the ground in front of the villagers, and the villagers are like, Mr. Savage, these people came, wanted to help us, but we know they were bad news compared to you, man. We love you. You would keep us safe. So here's the uranium you wanted. And we see that Vandal's barely interested. He's like, no, find me Superman and Batman. What's going on there? Meanwhile, the rest of you, load up the artificial suns and the uranium and all that. So they look for Batman and Superman. They come across Batgirl and start firing off shots at her. Superman and Batman, for whatever reason, have a glow around them that seems to be the teleportation glow, and they just appear and they get in the way of all that. Vandal gets in the middle of his Nazi gun and starts firing it off. However, instead of firing, it starts flying. And Vandal's like, what in the world? We disconnected the engines. And they say yeah. And Batgirl reconnected them, you idiot. So he starts flying away with nuclear superpowers. He's up so fast, so high. And Superman's like, all right, look, we got you. You're going to be up in orbit for a while. Wonder Woman will go get you soon. And he's like, screw that. And he starts ripping the ship apart. And Superman's like, no, man, it's barely holding. It's old Nazi tech. You can't be. And then the ship explodes midair. And immediately Superman turns to Vandal Savage's guy being like, hey, you got a tracker. You track him. Where is he? And Tracker Guy's like, I got it. He's gone. I don't have anything. And immediately they're like, all right, so like we all hope he's dead from that, right? But we all know he's not. And everyone's like, yeah. So we then get a page of Gordon congratulating Batgirl, saying like, oh, you did a good job. She's like, I know. And then Ken comes up and just being like, all right, we have to evac all these people, do whatever. And Gordon's like, hold on. And he pulls back the hood and he shows his true face and saying, I'm Jim Gordon. And Clark's like, Jim, oh yeah, I'm Clark. How's it going? They shake hands. Now, finally, on good terms. And then we get one final page here, which is back to the old Batman, and Superman's narrating, saying like, I know it's all cliche. I'm the light, you're the dark. I'm justice, you're vengeance. But like, in the end, we're never gonna give up on each other. I genuinely believe they thought the series would end right there. It feels like such just a like, and that's it, the end. But no, it's still got like 6 more issues, so I don't know what we were doing. It's good. It's fine. I'll admit, like, they put in so much effort towards like trying to do this 7 Samurai thing of like, oh, we're gonna train them how to fight and do all this other stuff, and then like the only thing they had to do was be like, oh, dead bodies in front of us, and we're just gonna be back over here. Like, I understand preparing for anything, and you know, their plan didn't need it, but still, it seems weird that we spent an entire issue on that. Also, the cover for this issue is Red Hood Strikes, and it's got Red Hood shooting Superman. Where the hell was that? I understand the cover line, but like, the cover just hallucinating an entire storyline is weird. Red Hood didn't even fire off a single shot in this. So yeah, no, it's a weird little thing. It doesn't feel like it's a bad story. I like the whole flashback to Superman thinking Jimmy died. It adds some characterization to him, but I don't know. It strikes me as like this weird sense of finality and this weird sense of like, they were told that it'd be the last issue and it actually wasn't. And then like the cover artist also didn't get the news. It's just weird. So I'm going to say this is a 7. I'll call it there, and we'll see what happens next issue. Catwoman number 47, written by Frank Tieri, art by Inaki Miranda. So last issue was the end of Genevieve Valentine's run, wrapped up pretty much all of the mob stuff, kept it totally separate. This issue respects it, says it happened, does not want any part of it. So we open up in Brooklyn, some club where Catwoman says the only way to get in is if you're Russian and you're part of the mob. And she's saying like, yeah, there's this guy in there. His name is Nikolai the Bear. He runs the place. He's super rich and all this stuff, and it's because he has all these mob connections. And as of last issue, I would have been able to sit down with him and have a talk and do like mob stuff. But this time around, I'm just back to being Catwoman, and I'm just gonna rob the bastard. So we see that he has a gem called the Star of St. Petersburg. It was something of the Russian Revolution, yada yada. Now it's priceless or whatever. And it ends up in his hands. And just like, well, he doesn't trust the museums and he doesn't trust banks. He trusts himself. So she goes back into his back office, starts safe cracking. And then as soon as she uses some of her high-tech vibrational whatevers to hack into it, immediately he's there at the door with 2 women in his arms saying like, let me show you some really good jewels. And she's like, oh, I shouldn't have underestimated him wanting to brag. So immediately, this guy shows why his name is the Bear. He starts attacking her. She's just dodging every punch, just being like, okay, well, if I try to punch him, I'm going to like break my hand. So I have to go for a weakness and then bail. And she kicks him in the nuts. And then at that point, she tries grabbing the jewels, but then a couple of his low-level guys come in. So she starts leaping around, eventually breaking out through a window, jewel in hand. And she's like, you know, I missed this. The adrenaline, the rush, like stealing the money rather than earning it. It's good to be back. So we then cut down to a pizza place somewhere in New York City. And Selena is having pizza with this guy. And we've never met this guy before, but his name is Louis the Mustache. And he's this big heavyset guy wearing a Hawaiian shirt. And he's like, oh, you're the only broad I've ever seen eat pizza with a knife and fork. And she's like, you're the only guy who I'm going to ever let call me a broad once. And he's like, fair enough. So turns out this guy is her fence, and apparently has been her fence ever since she was a child, despite the fact that earlier in this very series, no. But regardless, we're just saying that that's the case now. And he's like, yeah, okay, I've gotten rid of the diamond. It's all on your account. You're good to go. However, I do have another job for you. And she's like, all right, what is it? And he says, it's the frost diamond. And immediately her eyes widen, just being like, that's the job. Well, how much? And he's like, it's $1 million. Are you in? And she's like, what's the catch? You wouldn't just be dangling this in front of me if it was so simple. And he says, well, we have zero information on the client. She's like, nope, I don't take no info clients. I refuse to do that. It's too much of a setup. I ain't doing it. And then Lewis is like, fair enough. But I also got to tell you, I'm dying. I got stomach cancer and I got some kids, and the commission from this heist would be worth all of being able to pay for their college or whatever. But if you don't want to do it, then that's fine. I'm not going to. And she's like, all right, yeah, I'll do it. So, and he's recognizing, like, I would love to say that that's all for me, that you're caring about my stuff, but like, I know you just want to steal that diamond. And we see, yeah, there's a backstory on it. It's something called like the Frost Group is like a company and yada yada. It doesn't matter. Point being is that it's owned by this dude named Grant Bryce, the CEO of Frost Group's financial who cares or what's it. And he's hosting this big gala, and he's going to have the diamond there, and he's just showing it off because he's egotistical, and he doesn't think anyone would be so brazen to steal it underneath all the security and whatever that's there. So Selena gets herself invited as a +1 to someone else who looks suspiciously like Elon Musk, and we see that she's just keeping an eye on Grant Bryce for when he sets down his drink. And turns out that she was waiting to get a thumbprint because this guy is so egotistical, he made his thumbprint the master override for every system in this place. And we get a reintroduction to Tesla, who is the girl in the chair that was introduced shortly before Genevieve Valentine's run. And she uploads the thumbprint to the system and is able to get full control. So all the lights go out. We see Catwoman uses some infrared, heat vision, whatever, goggles to go around, start knocking out the armed guards in the pitch blackness. She just walks up, grabs the diamond, and then walks away as the lights come back up. And she's like, too easy. I almost felt sorry for the poor sap. So we go later that night. She's in her gear. She goes to Lewis's place to drop it off, and she's like, maybe offer me a challenge next time, like the Mona Lisa or something. But as she gets in, she sees that Lewis is dead. I'm going to assume murdered. He's got blood all over the front of his shirt, but they don't actually show like the wound, I don't think. It's questionable. There is a giant hole in his neck, but it might just be a fat roll because he is a big guy. So at that point, Catwoman's all upset, just like, oh no, your girls. Oh, I'll keep my promise. I swear. I will avenge you. And then all of a sudden she hears cop cars outside, and she's like, damn, they must have tracked me down. But then before she could do anything, cops are busting in the door. They got guns trained on her. She's got nowhere to run. It was all a setup. All right. Cool. I'll be honest, I'm not familiar with Frank Tieri's run at all. Genevieve Valentine was the last I heard of Catwoman being anything sort of like good. Obviously, he only has like 5 issues to really prove himself, and then we're going to hop off the New 52 train. So yeah, it's a good setup. I don't think that I'm disappointed with the way it's done. The art looks great. Good job for Miranda. It really does get back to it's a house style, but it works here specifically. And yeah, I mean, it's promising beginning. I don't expect this to be anything too deep, too crazy, but at the same time, I kind of don't want it to be. I'm okay with a back to basics Catwoman story because like the mob stuff was fun. But we did that, and we don't need to do it again. Let's just spend some time with Catwoman being Catwoman. So, 7.5. Looking forward to it. Starfire number 7, written by Amanda Connor and Jimmy Palmiotti, art by Emanuela Lupacchino. So I can't quite remember exactly what happened last issue, but the end teaser was that Dick Grayson, super spy, showing back up and seems to know Starfire, and this issue just retcons the hell out of everything. So Starfire has a job at the local aquarium or whatever. She's swimming with the dolphin and trying to explain the concept of time to the dolphin, despite her not understanding it herself, because Soul is there, and Soul is saying, tapping his watch saying like, hey, let's go, we gotta go do a thing. So she gets out of the tank and goes on a little scooter trip with Soul because they're going on a date, and they're talking about like, oh yeah, the dolphin doesn't understand why the humans are keeping her from her people, and like humans do a lot of strange things, and it's a whole thing where they're trying to make a point of humans are like not in touch with the environment or whatever else. But we see that because Starfire keeps on not understanding basic common phrases, Soul is like, are you like playing with me? Like, is this just kind of like part of your shtick? Like, is this a thing? And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. He's like, okay, all right. So turns out that they have a reservation on a boat called the Sea Queen. It is a Sunset Cruise dinner ship, and they're going to hop on it, and as they're hopping on it, there's a very suspicious-looking blonde man who's hopping on, and we see Dick Grayson has locked onto that suspicious man because he's got something in his briefcase that needs doing. So, being a spy, he has a face-changing thing called Hypnos that makes him look like an older gentleman. And so he tries to get on the boat, and he's like, oh, I'm sorry, I don't have any reservations, but this was the boat that my wife and I had our anniversaries on, and she just passed this year, and oh, I'm tearing up now. And the lady's like, oh, I'll just go ahead and have a sit at the bar. I'm so sorry. Please have your way in. And he's like, oh, thank you so much. I'll have a gin and tonic. So he's keeping an eye on the blonde guy. Meanwhile, there's other people on the boat that I guess are with the blonde guy, and they're noticing that he's watching them, so they're keeping an eye on him. Outside on the deck, we see that the sun is setting. Soul and Starfire are out there, and Soul's like, oh, by the way, it's tradition out here in the Keys that when the sun sets, you clap, and then you kiss the person you're with. And Starfire's like, I feel like you're making that up. But then everyone starts clapping, and then they start kissing, and so she does as well. And then we get a flashback sequence. This was in the prior issue where Soul's ex-lover, they were kind of keeping on the down low. They all went out into hurricanes to go rescue people. They took separate boats. Soul came back with the people he was rescuing, but Maria, she has not come back. And so he tries calling, and it goes to voicemail. So then he's like, I have to go save her. And he goes rushing out to a boat, and they're like, oh, but it's almost out of gas. So he takes a much smaller boat, and it's like, that's not able to deal with the waves. And they have to physically restrain him, saying, look, no, you can't do this. We have to protect you as well. And he's just like, no, Maria. Cut to her funeral. I don't know if they ever actually found the body, but they're like, oh, I can't believe she's gone. We're going to have a life together. And as he's grieving, he gets a voicemail from Maria. And she's like, how is that possible? And it's like, oh, well, her phone always sucked, and it delivered messages much, much later than it should have. So he listens to the voice message, and it's basically her just saying like, oh, I'm taking on water, but like, I can see it there. I hope you're having better luck than I am. Stay safe out there. I love you, and see you in a bit. And then he just breaks down crying at the grave. Cut back to now. He breaks the kiss with Starfire, saying like, I'm sorry, it's not you. I just got some stuff. And she's like, is it that Maria thing? Your sister told me about her. She said you might go through some stuff today. And he's like, all right, that wasn't really her place, but fair enough. I appreciate that she's looking out for me. And Starfire's just like, look, if you don't want to kiss again, that's fine. I'm here to talk. I'm here for whatever you need. I'm here for you. And they share a moment, and then all of a sudden bullets start flying. We see everyone hits the deck. Gunfires open up. They're aiming at Grayson. He's fighting off against them, throwing plates and whatnot. The blonde-haired guy has got a rope off the side of the deck as a speedboat comes up. He's trying to make his escape. And Starfire just all of a sudden bursts in, and she's in full costume. And she's like, wait a minute, what? How did that happen? Anyway, stop shooting. You're going to hurt innocent people. And they're about to try to shoot her. And then Grayson comes in, kicks one of them in the face, and just like, hey, how's it going? And she uses a starbolt to take out another one. She's like, oh my God, Dick Grayson, I thought you were dead. And he's like, wait, you can see through my hypnos? Oh, of course you can. You're an alien. All right, well, the people on the speedboat are getting away. Could you like fire a starbolt at them to get them to stop? Just the engine. Like, I need what's on the boat. And she's like, oh, well, if you say please. And he's like, oh my God, are you serious? Yeah, please stop the bad people from getting away. So she takes out the engine. Soul comes up being like, who are you? What's going on with your face? I can barely like make out what's going on here. And Starfire is like, oh, Dick, this is Soul. He's a friend, and like we kiss, but like don't worry about that. And also, Soul, this is Dick. He's supposed to be dead. And Dick's like, hey, Starfire, could you make like I need to get out to that boat. Can you like fly me out there? We gotta do a thing. And she's like, oh yeah, totally. Don't worry about it. So at that point, Starfire asks about the cloaking device, and he's like, yeah, I haven't had to try it on an alien, I guess. So whatever, you can see through it. Flies him out into the boat. We see that he immediately starts going super spy, starts beating everybody up. Meanwhile, Starfire, who's just watching from above, is like, I have so many feelings because this is a man that I once loved and that I mourned for when he died, and now he's back again. Like, oh, all these feelings all at once. And then the little light fairy sprite thing from previous issues shows up, and she's like, oh, it's you. Were you the reason that my costume suddenly showed up on me? And then it whistles, and then she's like, oh, okay. And then Grayson looks up like, what the hell is happening? And then he loses a little bit of footing in the fight. So he's trying to call out to Corey like, hey, I can use a little help down here. And she's just too busy talking, just like, oh, yes, he is a good friend of mine. How did you know? So finally, he manages to take out the last of the guys, but the briefcase that he was after falls down into the ocean. So he calls down Corey saying like, hey, can you go down and grab that for me real quick? And she's like, yes, I can, very easily. And he's like, will you please go down and get that? And she's like, absolutely. So she dives down, grabs hold of the briefcase, comes back up. Grayson's like, oh, thank you so much. It's very important that I had this. This is a trigger to basically a doomsday device. It would have enough power to level a city if it were teamed up with its opposite partner component, but they don't have that, and this is, useless without it. It's just basically a little toy. The people who made it are long since dead, but we're going to take it, we're going to analyze it and make sure that this sort of thing can never be built again. And Starfire's like, oh, so this is the only one, and if it's ever paired with the other thing, then it would be harmful to other people? And Grayson's like, absolutely. So she snatches it, throws it in the air, and blows it up. And Grayson's like, I've been following that for weeks. We were going to analyze it. Why'd you do that? And she's like, I don't see what the problem is. You said that it's the only one. No problem. And he's like, but like, it won't be in the future. Okay, whatever. Thank you. Thank you so much. So he goes over to the mini bar on this ship, which I swear to God, it was just a normal speedboat, but I guess they loaded up the mini bar. And so he pulls out a bottle of champagne, just like, all right, so tell me about this Soul guy. And she's like, oh, well, I told you, he's a new friend. Why aren't you dead? And he's like, I had to fake my death, and it hurt me to have to lie to the people closest to me. I hope that you can forgive me. And she's like, oh, I was so sad when you were gone. I was full of despair. And he cups her cheek and says, oh, I'm so sorry. I never meant to hurt you. And they embrace in a very passionate, fiery kiss. That's the issue. When the hell did this happen? Look, I don't want to brag, but the name of the show is Not So New 52, and I've been reading it since, the beginning. I seem to be missing the point where Starfire knew anything about Dick Grayson, had any sort of relationship. None of that happened. Now, I'm willing to forgive a little bit, because we are in the DCYOU era, and continuity is absolutely out the window for almost any sort of book, but like, when continuity goes out the window, what that means is that the books don't have to make sense with each other. Like, you can have Bruce Wayne Batman still running around despite the fact that he's dead in other books, or amnesiac, I should say. You can have Superman with his powers in one book despite the fact that everywhere else he's without them. This is what the lack of continuity means. You can't just say that this thing that was true prior to the New 52 is still true when it has actively been disproven. It has actively been made null and void, because Starfire absolutely does not know who Dick Grayson is. So, okay, we're just running with this now. This is now the status quo. If I run with that, it's a fine enough issue. It's Grayson shows up everywhere because the book sells like hotcakes. Why not? So be it. But it just comes out of absolutely nowhere here to say that, oh, and we always knew each other, and I'm so sorry I didn't talk to you before we left, because when I left, we didn't know each other. $6.5. It was between that or a 7. I think the continuity issues are enough to lower it down, because as much as I want to say it's the DCYOU, you can do whatever you want. You can't. There are still rules to things. You can't just say that this happened when it didn't. So 6.5. Constantine the Hellblazer number 7, written by Ming Doyle and James Tynion IV, art by Riley Rosmo and Brian Level. So last issue, Constantine went out doing a Ghostbusters thing for a while and then came back and hooked up with Oliver, that guy from the restaurant down the street. This issue starts on something completely different. We're in Central Park and there is a couple that is going at it, or rather they are about to start going at it. They're getting hot and heavy, and then all of a sudden the girl hears something. It's like, wait a minute, what was that? And he's like, it's like a hobo, don't worry about it. And all of a sudden it's cricking and cracking and noises start getting louder. She starts getting dressed again, and he's like, come on, baby, where else are we gonna go? But then all of a sudden these branch hands start extending out from the woods, and we see some weird demonic looking forest creatures start coming out, and there's a loud scream that's suddenly cut off, and then a foot just falls out of the trees, followed by a lot of other blood. And this entire time there's narration from Constantine that's basically saying, like, it's a natural impulse to procreate like that, but it is also necessary to survive long enough to do that. And in that case, there's strength in numbers. Usually that works out, but not always. So we cut over to Constantine, who is just sitting there having a cigarette while Oliver wakes up, and he's like, oh, hey, good morning, what's up? And it's like, oh, I'm surprised you stuck around. Haven't you heard John Constantine's dangerous? And he's like, yeah, well, right now I'm just hungry. So Constantine walks over, turns on his answering machine, and the message says, this is Papa. We need to speak immediately. And then he immediately starts trying to like fumble it off as Oliver makes note of it. And he's like, nope, it's not an answering machine. That's an ancient magical artifact. And Oliver picks it up and like, it's not plugged into anything. And he's like, see, spooky. That's my thing now. I like magic. Anyway, why don't you go and take a shower, and I'll be out here. So he goes into the shower, and then immediately Oliver's like, John, it seems like you have a little bit of a growth problem. And John's like, no, I had that looked at. It's benign. Don't worry about it. And then he steps in the bathroom and sees that the shower is overflowing with vines and flowers and stuff. And he's like, oh, that's different. All right, give me a second. And so he walks up to the shower and says, all right, you couldn't have just shown up as like a tree outside. You had to step up in here. Come on. And as the shower curtain opens and out comes Swamp Thing. And he's like, I don't have time for niceties. People are dying. Young people out in Central Park. And he's like, yeah, what else is new? And Oliver's like, okay, so a giant talking tree guy is inside your shower, and he just came out through the wall. And Swamp Thing doesn't even care about Oliver. He's just like, something's going on with the green in New York. It's weird. We need your help. And Oliver's like, I think I should go. And John's like, yeah, probably for the best. And Swamp Thing's like, oh, sorry, was I interrupting something? He's like, yeah, definitely. But, you've blocked me this way before. What do you got? So he says that in New York, specifically in Central Park, there is green, but Swamp Thing is unable to connect with it, which is weird. It feels like it's a desert there. And there have been multiple reported deaths over the past couple weeks, all of them young couples, and only one girl survived, and she reported to the police that basically the trees themselves came out and killed her loved ones. So it's a whole thing. And Swamp Thing's like, yeah, I'm going to need your help on this one. So we cut to them on the subway. They're riding out to Central Park, and he's basically saying like, yeah, I feel nothing in Central Park, so I need you to help me spread my essence throughout the park, because if I step foot there, I'll definitely die. So you need to spread my essence so I can get a root back in there again. And Constantine's like, okay, so what? I'm your go-to gardener? And Swamp Thing just goes silent. He's like, I'm sorry, was I not your first pick? Was I your second pick? And Swamp Thing's like, no. Look, I don't want to deal with you because, like, your methods are unorthodox. And then his silence for a beat. And he's like, also, you're kind of an asshole. Like, why are you making me take the subway? And we zoom out and see a bunch of people are on their phones just like snapping pictures of the Swamp Thing. And he's like, it's good for us magic types. Shows we're relatable. So they go to Central Park and we see Swamp Thing's got a big old sack that he's filled up with clippings of Swamp Thing. And he's like, yep, all right, I'll go around the park. I'll dump these around everywhere. And what are you going to do in the meantime? And he's like, I'm just going to wait for you. And he's like, well, you better watch out. There's some real weirdos out here in Central Park. And everyone's just watching Swamp Thing as Constantine goes off. So he goes around, he plants some different little entities that are tiny little swamp things that he can pop on. And he reminisces and just like, I guess I should be glad that like Swamp Thing at least came to me, because like he could have gone to any magical person. He could have gone to like the kid over in the Bronx that's got the Helmet of Fate right now, making thing over to Dr. Fate's book. Or he could have just gone into some random garden shop and like picked some rando out and said, hey, you're on a magical adventure now. But I think that's the difference between Swamp Thing and me, is that I get regular people involved. Swamp Thing tries to make sure that doesn't happen. So either way, he's like, all right, I'm almost done spreading your essence, but first I need to go take a whiz. So he goes off into a clearing. He finds a couple that's making out in the middle of the woods, and he's like, hey, I'm the sex police, get out of here. So they go running. He goes over to a tree and starts peeing, and then this forest nymph creature comes out, and Constantine doesn't recognize that she's a completely different species entirely. Just like, oh, hey, I think I saw your friends. They ran off that way. And she's just like, friends? And he's like, oh, are you like high out of your mind? Okay, well, do you have anyone here to look after you? And a bunch of other nymphs come out, and she's just like, oh, cool, yeah, all you good to go? And then immediately, like, they start turning into these demonic hellspawn-looking creatures, and John recognizes them and says, like, yeah, forest nymphs are always meant to be, like, these super sexy things that people try to capture, make their own. But, like, they're actually pretty violent and demonic if you stick around with them long enough. So they start attacking John. He runs out of the clearing, goes back to where one of the Swamp Thing little seedlings is, and he's like, hey, man, they're nymphs. That's the problem. I need you up and at them. We got to go. And Swamp Thing does like this huge motion to raise up a forest, and it just makes like a tiny little shrubbery in it. Constantine's like, what the hell was that? What is you? I need you to work here, man. Okay. And he's like, they're not part of the green. They won't listen to me. I don't know what to tell you. And he's like, well, go find someone they will listen to. And he's like, fair enough. And so Swamp Thing just leaves, and Constantine's like, all right, guess I'm dealing with this on my own. So he lights a cigarette, does a little magic incantation, and makes it so when he drops the cigarette, it makes a ring of fire that he's able to control the fire and attack the nymphs as they launch after him. He ends up only having to do like one or two, until Swamp Thing comes back. He grabs Constantine so he doesn't burn anymore, and he's like, I found someone that would help. And all of a sudden there's a big flash of light, and all the nymphs just freeze. They stop, and we see a mother nymph comes out. And it's like, oh, come my children, there's nothing to fear. And turns the nymphs back into trees, and the mother nymph talks to Constantine just like, yeah, no, the magic's going nuts in New York. There hasn't not been this much wild magic to make new nymphs in thousands of years. I didn't even know these ones were here. I will teach them how to live in harmony with nature and man and all that. Don't worry, none of your people are going to die. But like, word of advice, get a handle on that magic, because this is crazy levels of magic here. And he's like, yeah, all right, will do. Thank you. Bye. So he goes to walk off, and he's like, Swamp Thing, we cool? And then Swamp Thing's like, yeah, but before you go, that dude that you were seeing before, word of advice, cut him loose. The life we lead is not for normal people like that. He's gonna get hurt. Like, you know that. Don't be a dick, Constantine. And Constantine's like, that it? And he's like, yeah, that's it. I mean, just listen to me or don't. So Constantine goes home, and he thinks about it, and he's like, all right, I hate it, but yeah, there's a lot of danger on the horizon. I really shouldn't put Oliver into that. And I learned my lesson with V in the prior arc. So he calls up Oliver, and he's like, hey, Oliver, I was just hoping we could talk. And someone else picks up the phone, and it turns out it's Papa Midnight. And he says, well, I'm afraid Oliver's a bit indisposed at the moment. And we see Oliver is tied to a chair with all these runic marks on his chest, and he ain't looking too good. So, whoopsie, too late. Oliver's already dead. I like this one. I'm always a fan of the Constantine Swamp Thing crossover because you get such a straight man out of Swamp Thing, and then the chaotic neutral that is Constantine. It's a good counterplay between the two. It's almost nice to see it almost turned on its head, where Swamp Thing's, I don't want to call it naivete, but just, again, that straight man routine turned up to 11, whereas Constantine is now our protagonist, which I don't think I've read before. It still works. It's still a great dynamic. Art-wise, it also looks great. I love the way the nymphs are done. So, no, it's generally just good book. Really enjoying it. I'm going to give this one, I'll give it an 8. I think it really deserves it. It doesn't quite hold up to that previous issue. That one was just something fantastic, but this one was also very, very good. So, check it out. Green Arrow number 47, written by Benjamin Percy, art by Fabrizio Fiorentino. So, last issue ended with Green Arrow, I guess, being betrayed by Tarantula, despite the fact that it all seemed like part of the larger plan. It wasn't. I was just too optimistic, I guess. He's being dragged down into this dungeon jail pit, and he's like, I don't know how far underground I am, but it doesn't matter because my heart's been broken. I never should have trusted a tarantula, but I might have loved her. And as he's thrown into the cell and he realizes, like, I got broken ribs, broken legs, like all this horrible stuff, George, the wolf dog thing, comes out. He was also in the same cell. He's also been beaten up pretty bad, but they're happy to be reunited. So we go up to the street level where Tarantula is looking after the sister, girl, whatever it is that they rescued. Outside, Dia de los Muertos is going on, and she gets hit on and immediately threatens the guy. But as they're asking about the girl that they rescued, she's like, look, yeah, she's drugged, but she's going to come out of it. And the father's like, oh, but she'll be okay. She'll be back to her old self again. And Tarantula's like, no, it's never going to be the same. Neither will the city, and neither will I. I messed up. I got to go make it right. And so she runs outside and is like, I'm coming, Oliver. Then we get a backstory on this cartel leader because, yep, we needed that. Turns out he made all sorts of drugs under the name of Jefe. He was just like a 12-year-old who got started with like running drugs here, and it was all sorts of drug, heroin, crystal, all the stuff. Eventually, he made enough money to support a wife and eventually a kid, and when they had their child, he had so much poisonous drugs in his system that the baby came out ill, and it would only have like a year to live, if even given like top medical care. So he goes to the cartel leader or lieutenant and is just like, oh, please, for my child. And he's just like, yeah, here you go, here's $50. You can buy a teeny tiny baby coffin. And then he goes to the local priest, and the priest is like, nope, you're a sinner. You deserve this. This is God's whatever. Get out of here. So with no one else left to turn, he goes deep into the jungle and searches to the old gods. And as he prays to them, the god of death, Pooch, that's his name, or Apuk, I'm going to say Pooch though, he answers, and that's where we get all the moth motif, because apparently that's Pooch's thing. So his son was saved, was given new life, as well as he now does the bidding of this dark god. And it turns out that the Mayans played a game with the severed heads of people they sacrificed. So he takes the heads off of people who wronged him, including the lieutenant and the priest and all that. And he learns from Pooch that bones are just the best. They hold all the best stuff, and therefore he mixes the bones and the bodies with the drugs, and he makes a whole new drug empire on top of it, and that's where he starts robbing like graves of ancient mummy bones or modern pop star bones as well. They're all equal in the eyes of Bone God. So Dia de los Muertos is kind of his old big thing, and that's where he's going to re-up the sacrifice in order to allow his child to live even longer. So we see at the stake tied up to it is Oliver and George, and in steps Jefe, and he's just like, yes, you know, if you cut down a tree, you'll see its rings and see how it lives its life. Same thing goes for a bone. And so he uses a knife to cut through Oliver's clothes. We see the kid like bites into his own thumb to get some blood going, and then he starts marking Oliver with like some ancient Mayan symbols. And yeah, he's just walking around doing the whole thing saying like, oh yes, and churches, they have all these different relics and stuff like that that are supposedly imbued with power. I do the same thing but with bones. I have the bones of the first plague rats, the bones of the dog that went with Lewis and Clark. I got a lion that killed some ancient Egyptian whatever, like whole tons of stuff all here. And he says, and that's what you're here for. Your bones have powers because you're both outsiders. And he's like, how did you know? He's like, I hear a lot of stuff through the bones. So at that point, he basically says like, or Oliver's like, okay, but I don't have superpowers. I'm not like that. I'm not that incredible. I just was given a title. And he's like, oh, well, other definitions of power you're not familiar with. Meanwhile, the kid ain't doing well. He starts coughing up blood that has like maggots in it that all have skulls on it. And he's like, okay, we need to get on with the show here. So he hands the bone knife over to his kid, just saying like, all right, stab through this guy and get your strength back. And Oliver at that point pieces together what I just explained to you, like, oh, I mean, yes, he's crazy and he's doing this for like a death god or whatever, but he's also doing it because people will do anything for love. Anything. And in swoops Tarantula, who I guess takes them out. It's just she kicks them in the head, and then she lands next to Oliver, and he's just like, oh, I wouldn't need saving if it weren't for you betraying me. And she just lands a big kiss on him and says like, that's what I'm sorry tastes like. So she cuts them loose. They now start fighting all the goons around here. We see that the goons are like actual zombies. I don't know if that was revealed before, but it's definitely revealed here. And then the kid is coughing up more blood. He's doing even worse. Jefe is telling his god Apuk, like, hey, be patient. I will give you a body. And he goes up to George and is ready to stab George. But then Tarantula fires off her net gun and traps him against the wall. So George is safe. However, the kid, it's been too long. The kid just falls down and dies, and like immediately maggots just start coming out of his body everywhere. And Jefe is so pissed off that the god couldn't wait like a half hour more. He's like, no, I renounce you. To which point all of a sudden there's a loud fluttering noise, and we see the room is immediately flooded with these moths. Jefe's body is giving off moths constantly, it's being covered in moths, and they're devouring his body until there's nothing left but bones. And literally, I cannot imagine a less romantic sight than that. But Oliver's just like, well, just proves to me that the only thing worth killing for, the only thing worth dying for, is the lives of those you love. And he kisses Tarantula. The end. What the hell was that? All right. Story was a wild ride. I wasn't a fan of Mr. Bones' wild ride, I would say. I like the spookiness of it. I'll give it that. Like, there's a spooky sort of like horror vibe to it, but overall, I don't know. I think my biggest critique is that Oliver feels so passive. He feels so much like this isn't even his story, to the fact that like we as an audience get this flashback story for Jefe, and he doesn't know any of it. Like he's not aware of any of this that happened before. It's only once he's explained it by Jefe himself in much shorter terms that we get anything for him. And it's like, why not explain to this at the same time? Why not give Oliver like the same explanation here? It makes it feel like the audience is like more involved with the story than even Green Arrow is in the Green Arrow book. And that's been across multiple issues now. So yeah, no, this wasn't good for me. It was honestly just a little bit weird. And like I said, I kind of thought last issue that this was all part of the plan, but no, it turns out the plan is this is true love with this woman that you spent like a day with? Okay. Tell me how that works out. Yeah, no, I wasn't for it. So overall, I think I'm going to end up giving this one like a 6. I really, as an ending, it didn't work. As a next part, it didn't work. I wasn't having a good time. So I know that the next arc is theoretically the werewolf arc, and that the part 1 of that was in an annual that happened like 2 months ago. So go check that out if you haven't. But we'll see if we can turn it around for this last little bit. Earth 2 Society number 7, written by David H. Wilson, art by Alison Borges and Jorge Jimenez. So last issue, I can't even remember if last issue was the big reveal, but Jimmy Olsen's evil, and he paired up with a bunch of evil people, and it turns out that Huntress is on his side because she wants to remake the planet that they're on, Earth 2, back into Earth 1 using the cube and terraforming, and that's a bad thing. This issue is nothing. Like, I can't... So, the big thing at the end was they needed to target Alan Scott Green Lantern, who had become the heart of the planet, and he opens up this issue literally saying, I am the heart of the planet, and Dr. Impossible, Jimmy Olsen, wants to change me, and screw that, I am here to keep the planet the way it is. So, he comes in like a kaiju, just walking through this new Gotham, and going after Wayne Tech, because that's where Huntress and Red Arrow are held up trying to get the Genesis machine or the Origin Cube or whatever it's called set up. Karen, Power Girl, comes up saying, hey, Green Lantern, don't murder them. She's just having a tough time. I'll talk to her. I'll get it down. And Green Arrow's like, nope, gotta keep this going. Just like, flip, slits, like slaps her away. They activate the machine. Meanwhile, back in Erebus City, we see that Superman's still fighting against Hourman, and then Jay Garrick, who's still in a fugue state from seeing the true face of Johnny Sorrow, all of a sudden snaps out of it because Superman says, I don't have time for this, Hourman. And he's like, ha, time, hour, it's a pun anyway. And then he comes in, Batman throws him up to fight against Hourman, but he just rips off the Mirco injection system, to which Superman's immediately able to just blast him down. So they all start running over to Gotham, and Garrick just keeps on throwing, like, he's like, Superman, you said time to go. Is that another pun for time? And Superman's like, what, are you okay? What is going on with you, man? So they run over, just as Power Girl's about to fall out of the sky. Garrick grabs her. Everyone else comes in. Power Girl comes to and sees Val-Zod, Superman, and is like, I told you I never wanted to see you again. And she starts blasting Val-Zod, and Val-Zod's like, I swear I didn't know what I was building for Terry Sloan, and it ended up killing Superman because of it. You gotta let go of the past. Please forgive me, because that's kind of the running theme here. We see Dick Grayson, Batman, and Flash try to run in, try to like save the day or whatever. Honest to God, it's like 7 straight pages here of just Huntress realizes, oh, wait a minute, this isn't terraforming the planet back to Earth 1. This is terraforming the planet to become a giant mother box, because Jimmy Olsen got his powers from the mother box. We've been double-crossed. And then she's like, yep, I will join in on the fight to help stop Jimmy Olsen, but he may be too powerful now, because we see him fighting back against Green Lantern. Everyone hugs and makes up down on the ground before they say, like, okay, we got to spread out and take the fight. We got to stop Dr. Impossible. It's the only thing we can do. So Green Lantern's knocked on his ass. Everyone else jumps up trying to help out as best they can. Flash gets knocked away, but he acts as a distraction long enough for Batman to come in and try to do something with his tech. And Dr. Impossible's like, haha, yeah, I know you also need your tech to walk, Dick Grayson, so screw you. So now he's falling to his death as well. We see Dr. Impossible try shoving the mother box into Green Lantern's heart, which it will theoretically make him a god. And Helena's like, oh no, we're too late. And then Karen and Val-Zod come in and just double team Jimmy, just knock him on his ass, which gives Helena and Red Arrow enough time to fire off their arrows into the mother box. And then Green Lantern's like, oh, okay, cool, I'm good now. And so he zaps Dr. Impossible, puts him in a little bubble, and says, I can't kill you, but I can keep you trapped in that bubble forever. And so he does, and that's it. And everyone comes out of the woodwork of the wreckage, and they're like, oh my god, hey, isn't that the Superman from that other city? And there's Flash from that other city. They saved us. Hooray! And Flash is happy that everyone has fans, and Green Lantern's like, all right, well, I got Dr. Impossible here, but as you all stood together, separate, you were not enough, but together you will bring justice to this new society. Wink. So yeah, that's the issue. No, really, it's gonna sound like I have absolutely no reading comprehension at all when I say this, but when you put such a point on it at the very end to say you should all join together as a team because that's how you're gonna be able to like save the world, like, all of a sudden it clicks into place in my head of like, oh, that's what you were doing. You were trying to set up the team. Oh, because I'll be honest, I wasn't getting it. All these issues were so focused on these flashbacks and like the mystery of what Terry Sloan was doing and then going off into this anarchy thing. Like, it was so scattershot. To know now that the only thing you were trying to do was get everybody on the same page together, I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Doesn't make it good, but it makes sense. So yeah, I guess that is kind of my biggest critique, is that while this issue doesn't do anything too terribly wrong here, the arc as a whole has been confusing as hell just because, again, we had a year forward skip into the future, and then we just were like spending our entire time backfilling that. So the plot itself of like the Genesis machine and all this other stuff is simultaneously so simple and yet so needlessly complicated at the same time that like by the time we get to this issue and we're not backfilling the past anymore, I finally am like, oh, okay, I get it. I understand what you were getting at here. You could have been doing this the whole time. So yeah, I'll say this is a 6.5. I'm giving a lot of that on the art. I think the art does look good. However, this is actually the first time I noticed Dick Grayson's mask. Jesus, that is a horrible Batman mask design. If you haven't seen it, look it up. It ain't good. But yeah, no, I'll say this is a 6.5. Telos number 3, written by Jeff King, art by Steven Segovia and Igor Vitorino. Last issue, Telos got introduced to the gang, which consists of Stealth and Techne and Captain K-Rod and Captain Comet. And then they fought Validus, and this issue picks up with that, where, all right, I'm just gonna, look, I gotta be upfront before I start the issue. I lost the plot. I have next to no idea as to what is happening anymore, because I think the book is doing this layers upon layers of betrayal where like everyone's double crossing everybody, but Telos is so thick and so uncaring about the plot as a whole that like it doesn't make any sense. So yeah, Validus is fighting against them, and it immediately Telos is like, okay, well, one of us is going to be dead before this day is over. Probably going to be Captain Comet, because he's the only one who's trying to break the psychic hold of Computo over Validus, but not if I have anything to say about it. So he comes in and he knocks down Validus as soon as the severed connection has been severed, and he's like, oh, are you okay, Captain Comet? Your sacrifice has been noted. And he's like, oh, well, only thank me if he stays down. And as they're talking, it's just like, okay, well, we got to get out of here. We got to continue on with what we're doing here. So as some more drones show up, they put some stealth on to try to get by them, but then the drones start firing wildly. And then Validus gets back up again. So it's like, okay, we need to get this actually dealt with permanently in a way. So Telos opens up a temporal portal, and Captain Comet helps force Validus through the portal with Telos, and they end up somewhere in deep space where Validus is just going to float out there. And then Telos just goes back through the portal, no problem. We see very, very shortly thereafter, some random ship abducts Validus and gets him back going again. seemingly Capullo ship. But regardless, in the in-between there, Telos comes out to be like, okay, I took care of Validus. We took care of all the drones. Let's go. We're going to go to Brainiac. We're going to complete the mission. And Techni's like, no. Remember we talked about the Scions? Our hack alerted Capullo, and the Scions are probably already eliminating the traces of all their stuff, so we need to go get evidence before they do that. And Telos is just like, you son of a bitch. My entire goal is to get to Brainiac and Capullo, and like, God damn it, can we just do that already? And she's like, well, if you do that, I'll dump my data drive and your family's gone forever. And Telos literally says, and I quote, harumph. So anyway, Capullo gets pissed off because they put a virus in his system or whatever, and he's just like, oh, find that girl who put the virus in my... God damn, why did I not say... Brainiac! And so he calls up Brainiac. Brainiac's like, what do you want, bro? I'm busy. And he's just like, why have you not gotten the girl to me? And it's like, because she's got a stealth person there. Like, she's on your planet. I didn't think she'd be that hard to find. And it's like, oh, well, she's attacking me directly, and Telos is destroying my champions. And he's like, look, I sent Telos there to lead you to her. That was our deal. If it's such a big deal, I'll take the virus out of the system. Like, who cares? And Computer's like, no, I can deal with the virus. Virus isn't the... I got some good antivirus going on there. But you know what? Rein in your daughter, and I'll take care of Telos. So this is, like I said at the beginning, I completely lost the plot. They're talking about how they're trying to do like a political intrigue thing here. They talk about how there was a city on Colu that got shrunken for the sake of, like, they were so overpopulated up on the surface of the planet that they got shrunken down in order to manage the resources and like make it so that everyone could continue living. And Techni's trying to host like the revolution to give them like a wake-up call that this is like no way to survive or anything like that. They get teleported somewhere else again, and then she goes on this long monologue saying how like there was Brainiac, and then there was the failure of the government, and then like 7 corporations stepped up, and Capullo was kind of like underneath those corporations, and then one by one Capullo evolved and like gave all of the citizens a debt that they couldn't help to pay off, so therefore they were basically stuck in servitude, and it's just a student loan metaphor. And doesn't matter, it really doesn't, because the entire thing is they made a bunch of evil experiments or whatever down here, the Scions did, and we see they get to their lab, and it turns out that the weird genetic experiments are made from stolen DNA of Techni and Captain Comet, and these things are abominations, and they're like, oh, help us, sister, end us. And Techni's like, oh, we have to try to save them. Captain Comet's like, or we could just kill them. And he does, and no one has a problem with it. And then all the Scions are alerted that their labs were attacked, and possibly like the worst naming convention I've ever seen in a book. Captain Comet says, hey, be careful. These clones are infused with steam. And Telos goes, steam? And then they take 3 panels to explain what the hell steam is. Turns out it's not steam. Like, they call it steam, but it's actually a hyper powerful molecule that even just like 10 particles of would make them stronger than Captain Comet. Sure. So the Scions are attacking, they fight back, it's a whole thing. There's a whole bunch of Captain K-Rot just saying like, oh yeah, and if you see Jador the Glark on the way out, tell him I want my foot back, because they're going to harp on that till the day they die. But one of the Scions launches a self-destruct sequence. They say like, oh no, the entire facility will be consumed. We can't, like, we'll lose all of our evidence or whatever, but there's nothing else they can do. So Telos teleports everybody out up to the roof. There's a huge explosion down below, and they say like, well, we lost our evidence, but we then learned that Techni herself can act as proof, because somehow her DNA being taken to make those things means that she's the proof that they were making those things, despite the fact those things are gone. So I don't know, man. Techne gets in front of them all and says, like, oh, yeah, we got to tell the people, we got to do whatever like that. Telos is like, look, Brainiac revealed Capullo has a satellite backup. We can use that. We can take out Capullo. So everyone heads towards the ship of Captain K-Rox, and they do an entire bit on how it's like the Millennium Falcon. But we see Telos is just hardcore taking his way to Capullo's factory. Everyone else who's under Capullo's control is like freaking out. Everything's falling apart. And as he gets into Capullo's lair, standing next to him is Brainiac. And Capullo goes, ho ho! Are you surprised Brainiac was here? He played you the whole time. And Telos is like, no, that was pretty clear. I never trusted Brainiac to begin with. And Telos is like, come on, you're bluffing. That's not true. You believe Brainiac led you to Techne, and Techne led you to me, and your rebel friends are on their way into space for the satellite. But none of that is true, because on their ship, I put Validus back in there. But now he's Validus with the weird experimental gene stuff that we had from the lab before. You should see him now. And the issue just ends with that. I hate this book. Like, okay, if I have to say one thing, the art is good. I think the art is consistently good. It is very much a house style, but it works for what it is. A couple interesting page layouts as well, so they're getting creative with it. What the hell am I reading plot-wise, though, man? Like, if you want to do a plot where everybody's double-crossing everybody, you can't have everybody also be, like, saying that they are literally the smartest people to ever exist, because then all you're going to get is the I knew you knew that I knew that they knew that we knew that I knew. Like, shut up. Shut up. Look, I thought Telos was stupid after Convergence, but like it's only getting worse here. So I don't know, what do you want me to say? 4. I'm giving it a 4, and a lot of that's for art, because writing-wise, like, I lost it. I have no idea what's happening. And what's worse is I peeked ahead a little bit. I'm pretty sure this entire plot gets wrapped up in the next issue. Like, it looks like everything is dealt with, and then the last 2 issues are just something completely different. The hell thought this was good? 4. If not, it's dropping with every second I keep talking about it. Batman and Robin Eternal number 10, written by Snyder, Tynion, Lansing, and Kelly, art by Roge Antonio and Geraldo Borges. So this issue picks up with the continued introduction of Azrael. Who is he? Why does he have a flaming sword? What's going on here? We see Bane, Jason, and Tim are all standing down, and Tim's like, we should probably leave because I can't get a lock on this guy. I have no idea what he's about. And both Bane and Jason are like, nah, let's set off. Let's kill these guys. It's going to be great. And Bane specifically jumps in to fight Azrael, whereas Tim and Jason are left to deal with the minions, other followers of this religion, whatever it is. So they hold up like this little crucifix looking thing, and Jason's like, all right, I'm just going to shoot this thing because, like, why not? Turns out that it's some sort of major weapon or something like that. It's able to blow the gun out of Red Hood's hand. Meanwhile, as Azrael's fighting Bane, Azrael manages to cut right through his venom tubes, and Bane's just like, oh, your reign ends tonight, you fallen angel. And he's like, I'm not fallen, I was sent here, and I'm here to take on you. And, like, there's a whole bunch of good back and forth between Bane and him. But regardless, they comment on how the minions or whatever are something special. They're too fast, they're too strong, there's something extra here that's making them more than human. And Bane, meanwhile, is approached by Azrael, who puts his hand on his head and being like, oh, let me open your eyes. This is the wrath of the secret god. And we see Bane has like a vision. And Tim and Jason are like, what the hell is it? Okay, all right, Bane's off the table. We got to go. We got to get out of here. So they run out the room. And then Bane's just like, oh my God, I see it. I was wrong. Oh my God. So Jason and Tim are trying to run their way out. Jason keeps on saying like, hey, no, but like for real, can I like go back and shoot some people? Like, that's kind of what I do here. And Tim's like, no, Bane's whole thing was taking back his place. We don't care about his thing. We're here for information. That's what we got to do. And Jason's like, well, I'm out of ideas as to how we can get around this place because, like, we don't have a map or anything. And Tim almost immediately hacks into a drone that they managed to shoot down. And based off of mainframe, Bluga Blaga, it ends up being that he has a map of the whole place. And he says, and I quote, "Nerd skills with a Z for life." So they make their way into this central room area that the map calls the Gnosis Ionios, which means knowledge eternal, I guess. And it turns out it's just a supercomputer. So Tim says, look, you said earlier that you're almost out of bullets because of all your guns exploding, so I'll take care of all the people trying to break into the room. You run my hacking software. I'll walk you through it. So he basically says, all right, run this program, do this stuff, blah, 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 all the while he's fighting. And Jason's like, okay, all right, got it. I know exactly what I'm looking for here. And he tells Tim, like, okay, you need to come take a look at this. And it's just as Tim is wrapping up the fight. And Jason's like, you feeling better? He's like, yeah, you know, I had a little of anger because someone blew up my plane last issue. And he's like, yeah, well, check this out. We got a transaction between this place and a shell company in Prague, which is, of course, Mother. And they handed over assets of something called Project Ichthys. I don't know. Greek or Latin. And then immediately after all the stuff was done and it was all like technological, whatever, then they also commissioned a new project here called Project Azrael. And when they open it up, they see it's Flaming Sword Guy. And they're like, okay, his real name's John Pond Valley. He just appeared out of thin air. Like he has no record or anything like that. And Jason's like, he was designed. It's a Mother thing. He's one of Mother's children. This was the trade-off. They traded the idea of whatever project that this was for a super soldier in Jampon Valley. So we then go back to Prague several years ago after Batman met up with Mother or whatever. And Robin is patching up a wound and Batman comes in. He's like, what happened, man? How'd you hurt yourself? You're supposed to be training. He's like, oh, yeah, well, I saw a bunch of the Crane's goons and they were doing stuff and it's totally worth it, though. Like, I went down and we could take out his whole operation tonight. And Batman's like, this is like the third time you've run into their traps, man. Like, you're not thinking through this. And he's like, okay, you're training me to be your partner. I am acting like your partner. Like, if we aren't going to go stop the supervillain, what are we even doing? And Bruce tells him, like, take off the mask. And he's like, no, this is my mask. I earned this mask. I'm not going to do that. And he's like, no, look, you are not in advanced position. You are not someone to go out in front. You are backup. You need to remember that, okay? You're going to get yourself killed. And Dick gets pissed. He's like banging on the table being like, Robin was my idea. I watched you. I learned. I'm your partner. And if you know what? If you're not willing to admit that, maybe we're done. And so he storms off. Meanwhile, Bruce is still like cradling like a shiv that he got in the previous fight with Mother. So we see Bruce goes out and he tracks down Mother and he beats up a bunch of guys out in Prague to get there. And he's like, he tells the story about how when he was a kid, he beat up this kid who said something bad about his parents. And he's saying this to Mother and Mother's like, so what? In this scenario, I'm the kid? And it's like, no, the kid was making stuff up. I have a problem. You have a solution. I'm ready to hear you out. So we go back to Azrael, who I guess has caught up with Tim and Jason. And Azrael's like, who sent you? Gotham is blah, 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 whatever. Gotham's Dark Knight is dead. It's ready for its new owners. And Tim and Jason immediately jump into the fight. Jason is knocked on his ass immediately. And Tim's like, wait, hold on. We know who you really are. You're John Pond Valley. None of this is real. You were made to think you're Azrael. And he's like, no, I know. I'm John Pond Valley is like my human name or whatever, but like I became Azrael. I chose that. I know what I am. Like, and he says the name of the whole thing, the crusade thing is technology is of man and man is holy. Therefore, technology is good. So check this out. And he slams his hand into Tim's face and Tim just has a vision quest for a whole page and starts freaking out. And then as Jason gets back onto his feet, he manages to land a solid punch on John Paul's face, grabs hold of Tim as Tim's just like sweating. His eyes are bulging. He's like, oh, God, no, we failed Bruce. Oh, Jason, we failed Bruce. And he's like, yeah, totally. Well, we know. And he he's like, we're going to have to get ready to swim. And they both jump out the window as Jason sprays down himself and Tim with the shark repellent spray that Tim said that he had on him last issue. So we get a little bit where Grayson is talking to Harper, and I guess they've done some investigation. They are following up a lead on a bank transfer from First Sun LLC. It's literally just a montage. We see that Harper's in the middle of the fights, and she's also helping to break into the stuff. She's interrogating goons down on the street. And as this whole thing is happening, Grayson's like, I'm starting to see what Batman saw in you. You have potential. You are actually very good at what you're doing here. But then we go to some random island in British Columbia that they managed to track down to. They are looking for David Kane, and this is one of his only known residences. They sneak up into it. It seems to just be a normal house, so they're really on edge. They're like, I was expecting a compound or something. And then as they walk in, a woman says, hey, don't worry, you got nothing to fear, Harper Row. And Harper's in full costume, so she's like, how the hell do you know my name? And she's like, oh, I'm the sculptor, and I know everything about you, you runaway girl. And that's where the issue ends. So I have nothing to back this up. I have literally nothing at all. But James Tynion wrote this issue. He helped write this issue. The sculptor. If anyone knows Tynion when he finally got onto Batman years and years later after this, he had a whole bunch. The what was it, like it was like the Under King or Under Boss or something like that. There was like the Gardener, the Clown Hunter. Like it was always the blank. That's kind of his thing, and I just couldn't help but feel that here when they said I'm the sculptor. It's like, oh. Okay, I wonder what your thing is. Do you, I don't know, sculpt people to become a very specific way? Crazy. Yeah, no, I mean, this issue's fine. I think it would have been better without the Grayson stuff at the end. I know we need like a little bit of a cliffhanger, but that part just wasn't working for me. And then the Azrael stuff is good, but I kind of wish they would have just held in the fight and learned whatever they needed to there, rather than running off to this supercomputer, learning that he has a name, and then just like going back to the fight. Like, if you're going to go back to the fight, just stay in the fight. There's no reason we should have left that. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe Bane's going to be a cool thing now that he's been converted to Christianity or whatever the hell has happened here. But yeah, it's an interesting next step. So I'll give this one a flat 7. It wasn't quite doing as much for me as I would have hoped, but it's still on a positive trajectory. I'm still enjoying the book more so than a lot of the weeklies that came before it. And that's it. That is all the comics that were published by DC Comics this December 9th, 2015. And next week, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I'll be honest with you. I'm not used to this. I knew that as we were approaching the end of the New 52, that publishing-wise, the number of comics coming out each week got pretty light. It was not something that was consistently staying at 13, but next week I have 8 comics. And I'm pretty sure the last time I had 8 comics was a 5th week, like 2 years ago. Like, what am I supposed to do with my time? I could learn a second language. I could go to France. I could learn a second language that would help me in going to France. The possibilities are endless. But I'm not trying to get ahead of myself. We still need to get to next week. So let me tell you the comics that are actually on next week's agenda, and then we'll continue from there. Next week, we have, in alphabetical order, Batgirl, Harley Quinn, Justice League United, Martian Manhunter, Secret Six, We Are Robin, and the weekly series Batman and Robin Eternal. Out of that, I think the only things that are a major importance is Justice League United. That is the final issue of that series. And We Are Robin is, of course, the next part / maybe tie-in, I didn't actually check, of Robin War, which, again, everyone's favorite event. So, yeah, no, I mean, I'm sure this episode's like 2.5 hours because it's 15 comics and I didn't know how to shut up for any of them. But like next week, I'll be lucky if I break 1.5 hours. It's going to be quick work and I am happy for it. But hey, if you have anything that you would like to add to any of the comics I reviewed this week, next week, any week at all, go ahead and hit them up in the comment section down beneath this YouTube video. Or if you're not watching the YouTube video, you're listening to some other form of this, we got other places. We got a subreddit, we got a Patreon, we got a Discord. All the links to those are probably in the show notes / description of wherever it is you happen to be watching this. But let's be honest, just go over to YouTube. Like, I don't put ads on this. So, like, even if you're like, man, screw YouTube. They put on like 17 ads. Not me. I'm above the system. Screw the money. I'm here for the fun. And then I read Telos, and then I think, okay, maybe I should make some money. Anyway, that is literally it for me. I have nothing more to say. Thank you so much for watching, listening, however you consume this podcast. Be sure to interact with it positively through whatever means you see fit. And always try to remember, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.